Good morning. Welcome in to Hurrdat Sports Live. DB will be joining me here shortly. I'm Ravi Lulla here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill, and we're presented by Centris Federal Credit Union. A ton going on this weekend. It's officially March, and it is officially my favorite time of the year. But before we get into that, Shane, how we doing this morning?
Hold my Gatorade.
I don't have any Gatorade this morning, Shane.
Doing pretty good, thank you.
Yeah, we're doing all right?
Yeah.
Getting ready for maybe a little snowstorm tomorrow?
Possibly.
Not too excited about it?
And I know you told me not to jinx it, but I was a couple weeks ago when I said we're probably out of that. But
Yeah.
what I meant by that was, and I thought about this, what I meant by that is we're probably out of the cold for like 2 weeks afterwards.
I hope so.
Because it's supposed to warm back up right afterwards.
Yeah, that's right. I'm hoping you're right. I can deal with a little bit of snow as long as we're not dealing with the -20 at the same time
for like 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's something I can live with for sure. But it is, even though we might have a blizzard tomorrow, at least in certain parts of Nebraska, it is my favorite time of year, and that is March. And unfortunately, 2 out of the 3 teams in the state of Nebraska didn't get the on the first that it was time to start playing good basketball. But luckily, our Omaha Mavericks certainly did, clinching the Summit League title. So congrats to Coach Crutch. That was a little trickier to say than I was hoping. And the Omaha Mavericks, great win for them. I'm eating a little crow here this morning with Coach Crutchfield and that roster. Have been for a little bit. Obviously, I was pretty vocal about my frustrations about the way the roster was assembled, but got to tip your cap to them. That has been a ball club that's been playing really well for a while now. So congrats to them. We love our Omaha Mavericks in all sports, but you know me, I'm a basketball guy across the state, despite what some Nebraska ball fans would say about me. But it is it's a great day to be an Omaha Maverick here in March. And now they're in a very unique position. I know we've talked about this a little bit before, but they're going to be in a super unique position heading into the Summit League tournament where either them or St. Thomas can win the Summit League tournament, and Omaha will get the automatic bid into the NCAA tournament because St. Thomas is still in their probationary period of moving to Division I. I do have to give a real quick shout out, speaking of kind of transitioning into new things. Former player of mine, Jake Heck, coached the Carolina University Bruins, what I'm repping this morning on the shirt here, to their first ever Colonial Athletic Conference championship in the tournament over the weekend. So they'll get an automatic bid into the NAIA national tournament. So congrats to Coach Heck and his squad down there. I appreciate them because they actually followed kind of a similar path that we saw from Omaha this year, where they struggled early, were able to right the ship and get playing well right when they needed to. So shout out to not only my buddy Jake, but also Coach Crutchfield and Omaha. And hey, if they can sustain a winner here in Omaha, then I will continue to eat crow on how they went about their business. What's up, DB?
Hey, do you like it warm or cold?
The crow?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't generally
take it from a guy that's had to eat it before. Go warm.
Go warm, yeah.
Something about warm feathers go down easier if you're not going to do all the.
I'm not allowed. I'll say I'm not allowed to pluck the feathers.
Nah,
I got to eat it whole.
I mean, you could do your thing, but you got to go all or nothing, because I don't know if you've ever had like skin on chicken and occasionally you see the little strand and it looks like a feather, and you know what time it is, but when you see it, it's like, am I really about to eat this? It shouldn't be a game changer, but it is.
You know what that is for me? It's when the face is still on the fish.
Yeah, I'm out.
I'm not doing that.
Man, me neither.
I'm not interested. Like, I understand it comes from an animal. I don't need to see the face.
Yeah, I'm not doing that.
I don't need to see the face. I don't need to see the feathers. I need to just, like, I get theoretically where it comes from. I don't need to see it.
So last year we went to a place, and I was with my mom. I believe it was for her birthday because yeah, it had to be, because I asked the bartender to make her something special.
Okay.
And typically it has to have some colors to it. And this ridiculous stuff, right?
So she's a lot like you. She enjoys a nice mixed drink,
Yeah.
Put a lot of
yeah. It's not the only thing we're polar opposites about.
Are you
But of
kidding
course,
me?
kind of do the thing where we don't really indulge in front of the kids and stuff
Sure.
like that. So I'm like making nice with the bartender, and he barely speaks English.
Yeah.
Which is fine because I could tell he was cracking jokes. He's probably making fun of me, and I didn't know. But I mean, it's whatever. And so I'm kind of, I immediately made friends with him.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm asking him about items, because there's a place where you can like go out and look at the actual stuff before it hits your plate.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he misunderstood. I didn't want listen, I didn't want the shrimp with the heads on.
No.
So my plate comes and it's already goes against everything I believe in because everything was just kind of on there.
Yeah.
So like if something had juice, it was on the other. And I'm not one of those. I mean, I'm a child, but I'm not like my food can't touch. But you got to meet me halfway.
You got to have some level of.
Yeah. You know me.
And
I'm so good with boundaries. I need boundaries on my plate. It's just like my life; it all bleeds over.
Might be the only place in your life you want boundaries. It's on your plate.
This poor host lady server. I don't know what's politically correct, but she puts my plate in front of me.
Yeah.
And I must have had a look on my face. And this is what I get for sitting on a poker for the last 3 years, right? I have forgotten how to like do the deal.
Like fix your face.
Yeah, it was not fixed. And I can't do her accent. I should. Almost.
Almost gotcha.
See, I've been up forever, so I'm relatively sharp. But I'm like, oh, these have heads.
They have like the little beady eyeballs and everything.
Man, you're not feeling me. She looked at me sideways like, no bleep. But what she didn't understand is that's not what I asked for. I made a mistake with the gentleman that was secretly pouring drinks for my mom. Yeah, I'm not a head zone guy. I'm not. I've seen people.
Did she give you the look that like cut you to the soul when I give you?
Yeah, and she is a little itty bitty thing too. So I didn't want to like
give her the
snap back. Yeah, I'm telling you, those head tilt, eye squinty, they does something to me. That's why I had to snap a couple weeks ago. What'd you say to me? It's kind of innocuous, but it was the way you said it.
Was it the organic thing?
Yeah, it was organic. It was last week. I get all the unpleasant responses from you mixed up. My timeline is all screwed up. Seemed a lot longer ago than it was. Still makes me feel some type of way. Yeah, I'm out.
Yeah.
And there's another thing.
What's that?
And I eat it so much, I've got to get over it. I don't know what the part is in the eggs that takes forever to cook so it's not clear. There's always that little. I don't care if you go sunny side up, if you go scrambled. There's always like this little random portion that's like translucent still.
Yeah, it's like the membrane.
Man. Ooh, insane to the membrane.
Insane in the brain.
Were you a big Cypress Hill guy?
Not really. Absolutely. It's a little early for me in terms of when I was getting into hip hop and stuff like that. It's a little early for me.
Okay.
They weren't as big, like late 90s where I start to kind of. I go back a little bit. I'll get like some Tupac and Biggie, but that's about it.
My wrestling Journey's a huge Cypress Hill. I mean, shocker.
Really?
Yeah, he's a huge Cypress Hill.
I mean, there's a couple
so what
that
is
I
it
know
about that membrane that just it's stubborn?
Yeah, I think it's made of different, like it's just different consistency.
I see it, and it's kind of a game changer. And I know what I'm dealing with.
Yeah.
But I can eat eggs any old kind of way. Sunny side up, scrambled, over easy. As long as I only have one rule.
What's that?
If there's yolk, I want there to be yolk. If it's not supposed to be yolk, i.e. scrambled,
yeah,
then I'm cool. I don't like
runny scrambled eggs.
No.
Yeah.
And I don't like hard, like when it's supposed to be.
like over hard.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I get you.
Yet I'll smash hard-boiled eggs or deviled eggs.
Yeah, but that's more consistent of what they're supposed to be, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't like. Oh, I wasn't expecting that.
The mix and match.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get you. How was your weekend?
It was chill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I made a little road trip this weekend.
Where'd you go?
Lawrence, Kansas.
Yeah. So my last roadie, I made like a new bestie.
Really?
Yeah. I can't wait to hear your story because mine was on accident.
Well, how'd you do that?
So I was out in Fairfield.
Mm-hmm.
And I only have a certain capacity for so many small town friends.
Yeah.
And there's a couple people that fit the bill. I just was with Brett this weekend. But the guy that hosted the event was so kind
Mm-hmm.
and so nice and so appreciative. Like he texts about every other day now.
Mhm.
It's like, hey, can't wait to see you next year, and we do this again, and gotta meet my wife, and it's my man Joe Svoboda.
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh, I think he's interacted with us before.
one of the nicest people
That name sounds familiar.
ever. Like he's like, hey, he's one of those guys. He's like, well, just want to say thank you again. This is like the third time.
Mhm.
I'm like, I think I'm gonna have to like this guy. He's just, you know what I mean?
No, he's appreciative.
Right. And
Yeah.
we connected because we were walking out, and I can't remember what one of my answers was, but it kind of, I think it might have been won him over,
Mhm.
the crowd. Oh, I know what it was. He asked me a question about Sharp
Oh,
because he had just lost somebody close to him, and I wasn't going to answer. But
yeah.
I was on the spot because there were 200 people looking at me. No, this is real.
Yeah.
You talk about performing under pressure.
Yeah.
So I gave myself a 15-second count. It had to seem like an eternity in there.
Oh, probably.
No, this is real.
Yeah.
I've never. So I think, Sty's kind of looking at me. He's like, you good?
Yeah, it's like, you gonna say something?
So I got some courage. I did not whine. I did not cry. I gave the answer. And I think he felt bad that he asked me.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, no. At some point, I have to be able to.
Sure.
To
talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And never looked back.
I think that's the hardest part sometimes.
So my man texted me. He's like, hey, just want to say thank you. Where should I send the address? Where should I send the thank you? And I was like, do I? Don't I? Headquarters, Sports Bar and Grill, home. Headquarters, Sports Bar and Grill. So I gave him the whole Matty.
If I don't know
So
somebody,
he's in.
yeah.
He's in. He's in the tree of trust now.
If I don't know somebody, 100% chance they're getting to headquarters. 100% chance. 100% chance.
So you're just making friends in Lawrence?
Not making friends, really. I don't think I talked to a single person I didn't already know.
Why did you go?
So, Jake, I was talking about this a little bit before you came in.
Oh, yeah.
Had their conference tournament down there.
I didn't even put two and two together.
Yeah, so it was down in, man, it was a long day, though. So they played Thursday. If they won Thursday, I go, hey, if you win Thursday, I'll come down Saturday for the semifinals. And so I went down Saturday.
Did you ride K Solo?
Yeah.
Man, I do that a ton.
Dude, it was rough. I don't do a ton of road trips solo. I'll drive a lot, but I do it with a person, right? So like Natasha and I will drive to Chicago. When I went out to Champaign for Evan's dad's funeral, I went with my buddy Josh.
I had to stand by myself. I went to Fairfield by myself. I don't know.
Dude,
nobody wants to go.
I don't mind driving, but solo's a little rough. So I went 3 hours down. Wasn't terrible.
Did you have a laptop, a phone, and your radio?
No, I stuck with the podcast just on the Bluetooth. I wasn't trying to do all that. I did listen to a lot of I listened to a lot of the Nebraska game on the way down.
Basketball?
Yeah.
We're going to get to that because I want to slap hands or wrists, but I don't think I should.
I think you should for some. Some.
It's not because of what you think, though.
Oh, really?
No.
What is it?
I told you should be able to say out loud Nebraska's a good basketball team, right?
Yeah.
So they're a good basketball team. 2 out of 3.
Mm-hmm.
I push back against your narrative that if they lost, it's over. And I said, that's for people that don't actually watch basketball. Like Minnesota's a bad matchup.
Yeah.
Like Minnesota's, I'm not going to say they're a good team, right? You don't trail for 70 minutes to be a good team, right? But just it's a bad matchup for Nebraska.
And they've been playing better.
And so the coach in me,
mm-hmm.
Is like, I don't like the matchup.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's just some teams we'll play that have a worse record than.
Yeah.
There's just some team. It's just how it is.
Yeah. There's some teams that you just don't have either a good feel for, or they do things that you don't do well.
Yeah. I can look at a team's run game, and I'm like, I can look at Papio and I can think, that's a problem. I can look at Prep and I can say, we should be okay.
What was the game?
You know what I mean?
What was the game a couple years ago, North Platte?
Yeah, problem.
Where you went out there, just a bad, like you're more talented than they are, bad matchup.
Problem. We gap teams out. Just how we play.
Yeah.
Right. We run a lot of alleys, so
their strengths line up with your weaknesses, and it can be a problem.
Yeah,
for sure.
And they were lighter, quicker.
Mm-hmm.
or lighter as quick. And a lot of what we do is predicated on
being quicker.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
So anyway, that game did not surprise me at all.
But
I told you that
you
before.
did. You
I
told
said,
we
hey, man.
were sitting here with solder.
I said, this is not going to be good.
But here's the problem. There were two
I
things.
Want to hear the Lawrence story.
Well, we'll get back to it. But there's two things can be true at once, right?
Okay. Hey.
What?
I'm going to let you know. When a guy,
yeah,
you want to rule like 17.
Sure.
When a guy has the stones to emotionally say something out loud, knowing he could be rejected, you're only gonna get that once. Otherwise, it's going away, and dudes suppress it. So when I say, I want to hear that,
okay,
and I made myself vulnerable, I'm not going to ask you like that again. So the next time that rolls around, I'll be like, hey, man, tell the story. See, that's what happens.
I misunderstood what that was. I thought you were just being like, oh, you can get back to your story now. I didn't know it was like you reaching out.
See? My delivery didn't give it away.
I didn't quite get it. That's on me. I'll take that.
Hello, friend. No, he's out.
So I went down to Lawrence, and so I'm watching them play. I was kind of bummed, though, because I only got to stay for the semifinals because the finals were last night. They were at 7. And I was like, oh, man, I can't stay till 7 because then I'm not rolling in here until 1 o'clock in the morning. And I was like, that's just not going to work with the day job, right? So I watched on the stream last night. They went in the semifinals. First of all, they were the last seed in because they had a tough start to the year.
All right, then, Flaky Jake, that a boy.
So they knocked off the number 1 team first game on Thursday. And then they go.
Dirty bid stealer.
They go in. They beat in the semifinals. And then they had this team from down by them. This is the third time they played them this year, Spartanburg. And so they have this dude.
Spartanburg?
Yeah, South Carolina.
South Carolina?
Yep. So Jake's in North Carolina.
I had training camp at Wofford.
Yeah. So Jake's in North Carolina and Winston-Salem. And then so they played Spartanburg 2 times already this year. But Spartanburg had the player of the year. This nice little smooth guard, Bayonne, super good shooter.
Bayonne is the last name of Bayonne, New Jersey.
Yep, that's his last name. Nice little shooter.
Played with a great player from Bayonne.
Nebraska had some good players from New Jersey for a while.
Ernie Beeler just went into their Hall of Fame back in Bayonne.
Really?
Yeah.
The Peters was from New Jersey too, right?
AKA Wafis.
That was his. That's his nickname.
Yeah, and you called if he wanted you to call him sir, you called him sir.
One of those.
He messed up my hair once.
Yeah.
I'm young. Messed up my hair.
Yeah.
Cutting it in the dorm bathroom. I thought about it. I did.
Didn't say nothing?
I did. I thought about it. Then I looked at his frame, squatty body, scars, face messed up. Like New Jersey. I'd seen him bully like 55 people in like 6 days that I'd been there. I was like, yeah, I'm probably going to eat this one. I'll just wear a hat.
Like, I'm going to pick something else.
Oh, believe me, I thought about it.
I'm going to pick something else.
And it was free. So I certainly wasn't. I'm like, And then my dumb butt gets in a fight 2 days later at a house party. With somebody I had no business fighting with.
Well, you held off for as long as you could.
Flipping Dwayne Harris.
Oh, you don't do that?
Yeah, but I mean, he started with Clinton, so because he and I were together.
Yeah.
With a third party, and I'm like, game on.
Yeah.
Just young and dumb.
And we're teammates.
I mean, we're fresh there. We've been there a month.
10 minutes.
But it was that knucklehead class. They were as hard-headed as we were.
It was 91?
Yeah, so it was like Abdul.
Yeah.
Another tough guy, Dwayne.
Because it was 91 and 92, right?
Yeah. Those two classes, the mentality just
a little pressing.
So anywho, back to so they're playing for the championship.
Yeah, so they're playing for the championship last night.
Bayonne is did he go ham?
So no, they actually did a really good job on him because they had a familiarity with him. He's conference player of the year. But basically you have to face guard the guy. Like he's like that.
Ooh, deny.
Pretty much. So he got loose for a couple, but they did a pretty good job on him. But here's the thing that I was impressed with.
They just chased him all night.
Yep, 100%.
Oh, that's classic.
You have to. If he gets loose at all, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
And so It kind of reminded me, though, of a little bit of the mentality you see with Nebraska in some of these situations, because they get up about 18 yesterday in the second half.
Good guys?
Yeah, Jake's team's up about 18. And so that's kind of the spurt where Bayonne gets going a little bit. He knocks a couple shots down, gets it to 12. And I'm like, Jake, call timeout. Call timeout, Jake.
Are you talking to the computer?
I am, yeah. I just, all the full disclosure, I texted him.
During the game?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Just in case he looked. Like, I didn't think he would, but I was like, just in case he looked, I have to do my part here.
Yeah.
So I was like, take a timeout, Jake. Gets to 12.
What was he going to do? Be like,
you never know, man. You never know.
By the time he sees it, they cut it to 6.
Still, take a timeout. So you never know. But so they're cutting in. And here's the part where it gets interesting with teams, right? Is 18 to 12 can happen when you're still playing pretty good, right? 18 to 10 can happen while you're still playing pretty good. You get some good looks still. You miss a couple, but you're still kind of in what you want to do. 10 going down to 3, they start not playing so good.
You're in
You're in a little
scramble
bit
mode,
panic mode, start playing a little bit hero ball on offense, start getting a little frustrated on defense.
Does he have some heroes? Are they some of the parts?
He's got a guy, I would call him his point guard. He's the primary ball handler, is like a lot of what they do goes through him.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
And really all conference player, won conference, won the tournament, most outstanding player. Andre Polk, really good basketball player. He had this kind of stretch where he'll make really good decisions, but every once in a while he'll maybe settle for a 3, and you're like, probably need you to be a little bit more aggressive there. And so you had a couple of those in that stretch, and it gets all the way down, and they end up being down by a couple points. They go from up 18 to down by a couple points, probably 6-7 minutes left in the game. And you go, okay, this is really easy for a team, especially a team that's kind of been through some struggles, to maybe let it get away from them, right? You blew an 18-point lead. You're like, oh, that was our shot. We probably shouldn't be here in the first place. Some doubt starts creeping in your head, right? This is where I'll give him a ton of credit. None of that. Got right back on it, figured it out, end up winning the game, end up winning the championship. And that's one of the things that I actually do like about Nebraska, right? Is there's a mentality and a toughness there because it's really easy. You're down by 19 against Minnesota, and this is a game that you can't lose, and you've sort of already screwed the pooch.
That's the one thing. I'm glad you brought that up, because that's the one thing that gives me oh my gosh, dude, I just getting spammed. I don't understand.
Dude, my Twitter spam's been real bad the last 2 weeks.
Has it?
It's been terrible.
Yeah.
I think they must have changed the filter or something.
Hello, you have great taste. Can we be friends? Probably not. Here's another one. Sleepless nights? Can't function? Paying too much attention to Wall Street? Sudden change in the feds got you down? What's what are we doing? They're pretty different. So that's the pushback that I give against
Nebraska not being very good.
No. That they don't like each other.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So because this has been a thing that people have been talking about for almost a month. Right? And I've kind of put my head down, just buried my head in the sand. I'm like, now there's some dudes out there that do some things that would probably piss me off. But I don't know about the not like thing.
Yeah.
Everybody's like, well, that looked like a team that had been on a 4-game roadie or a 4-day roadie and hadn't come back.
Yeah.
They just needed to come back. I'm like, okay, and kind of vibing. I look at a little bit of the body language. I'm like, okay, maybe. But they're not good enough individually to just light switch a deal without having some camaraderie.
Mm-hmm. We've seen this too many times.
Yeah, it would just be very, very rare for a team that truly doesn't like each other.
Yeah, 100%.
Now, they may have, I could guess 1 or 2 of the parties that you kind of want to give the side eye to.
Yep.
But
some of the same parties I want to give the side eye to.
But I can't, they come back too much.
Yeah.
They just don't lay down.
They fight too much.
If they laid down a little more, I would probably subscribe to that.
For sure. Yeah, I would.
But I'm not saying, hey, listen, man, everybody got,
I'm not saying it's all kumbaya and
everybody got
s'mores
Christmas
and whatever
cards and stuff.
But I do think there can't be so much animosity, because you're right. There is too much. We've seen too many of these.
Yeah.
right? This is not an isolated experience. We've seen this happen over and over and over again, which is a problem in its own right that you keep finding yourself in this position.
Yeah, there's of something.
But
bigger.
that's a different thing,
Right.
right? Like that's a different, maybe it's a preparation, maybe it's a mentality, whatever.
You know,
But in terms of fighting back,
when you play like that, you know the preparation I think of?
H,
Correct.
because it's like a booty hole.
Inflamed butt cheek tissue. Press. That's what that makes me think of. Oh, man, that looked like booty.
That's TV. I'm Ravi Lulla. We'll be back with more Hurrdat Sports Live coming up next here on a Monday morning. Welcome back, Hurrdat Sports Live. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill, where you can check out. We got some new specials out here. It's a new month. We got some fish and chips.
I saw the fish and chips,
which I do like a good fish and chips.
I do too, and it's one of those things that I have to walk by like this.
Yeah, just keep your head down.
Yeah.
I think they're doing a Reuben this month too.
Oh Lord.
You like a Reuben?
I like corned beef.
Yeah, me too. I like corned beef. I like pastrami. Whew.
I'm real iffy about pastrami.
It's got to be good.
You
like versus pastrami, don't you?
Yeah, it's different. It's got a little smoke to it, and
yeah,
it's got a lot of smoke to it. And it's not as peppery.
Yeah, it can get a little overly peppery if you get the wrong.
I think you have to be careful with the whole mustard seed, peppercorn.
The what kind of seed? Mustard. Right there. I don't know why. That's I find that so funny. Just the yelling of mustard.
Yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Did we ever arrive at whether you're a Kendrick guy or not?
I'm more than I am Drake. He's not like my favorite.
Drake's got new music out.
Yeah, I'm cool.
He sampled a song you'd have no idea about, but the sample was so good, I went back and listened to the song solo. I'm a big, I've talked about him before. The group is Guy, and the lead singer is a guy named Aaron Hall. But anyway, he sings the song "I Miss You." I'm talking to you, baby. Trust me, it's a Baby Batter song, like from the 90s. And I can say that. I can say that, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're on the internet. We can say anything.
90s. You can always talk about the 90s if you want.
Anyway, it's Baby Batter music, and he's got it sampled in his new song.
Yeah,
and I'm like, oh my gosh, I missed that song. So I
went back and got it.
So I'm going to meet my mom for dinner. Mike is sitting in front. He's riding with me, and I'm like, hey, I know you hate, slow jams, but this is where I played it off. Like, hey, this is where Drake got the song from. My man rolled his eyes, folded his arms, and slouched in the seat like he was 4. I said, really? You can't give me 3 minutes of just listening to a song? He's like, Dad. Dad, you're Mr. Situational Awareness. This isn't the right situation. I was like, God, I hate you. So I turned it off. It's fine.
He just wasn't feeling it?
Nah.
Wasn't about that?
Not his thing. So anyway, glad you let me take a couple steps backwards.
But no, I'm not. I like Kendrick. He's not my favorite. Like, I'm not going to ride with him or whatever, but
me neither.
He's got some good stuff though.
Yeah.
And I just think the mustard thing's funny.
Mustard.
Anytime I have a chance to yell mustard, I'm going to do it now. Coming up on the show today, we've got our friend Sam McKewon from the Omaha Herald. We'll, I'm sure, dive into a lot of Nebraska basketball and everything else going on around the area. And then at 9, we're going to do a little NFL Combine wrap-up, a little NFL Draft preview with Jeff Risdon from the Draft Wire. Good results for Nebraska players from the Combine.
Really good results.
Like, that's about best case scenario for all 3 of those guys, right?
Yeah. I mean, 100%.
Like I think Neyor, of the guys that actually tested, was athletically.
Did you see his RAS score?
He was the first in the group, wasn't he?
And he was, I think,
of this year's group, but
he was maybe only 12 spots out of perfection since they've been doing the score for wide receivers.
Yeah. I mean, the size, speed, explosiveness. He didn't run the agility drills.
And Nebraska fans were still out here piling on because, they want to be right rather than get it right.
Well, here's the other.
Can you see how many? Now go back and see how many drops he had.
So,
and listen, he drives me crazy too because he didn't always practice hard.
Yeah.
But he also paid a price, which is why some games he would just disappear because then they just stop playing him.
I mean, yeah. But I think that's the frustration, right?
I mean, he does have some lapses.
He's got all the physical tools you would want.
Yeah.
I think it's weird. I think Nebraska, maybe it's not weird.
Although I don't know about how you feel about Tommy because he didn't really do anything. You're talking about guys that like really, really like perform.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, of guys that like were testing and
So
performing.
I still can't believe that dude weighed in it. What was he 214?
I think so. That's heavy.
Ain't gonna work.
That's heavy. Ain't gonna work. But I do think there's a level of frustration, specifically with Thomas Fidone and Isaiah Neyor, right?
I talked to him all weekend.
Fidone,
Oh yeah.
how's he doing? He had a good week.
Is out of the clear blue.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just caught some snippets of some things.
Yeah.
I think it must have come from some people close to him.
Mhm.
He just was like, it was.
Yeah.
I was like, ow.
You all right there? That actually sounded painful.
Well, I got the burn knuckle.
You get a little knuckle on knuckle there?
Yeah, you hear that?
Yeah, that was loud. It was weird. But no, I think there's a level of frustration. And we talked about it with Fidone on Friday, but I actually think it might be worse with Neyor because there's no injury there. Like we can look at Fidone.
I don't know, man. I think we're harder on. Do you? I'll listen. Go ahead. Present your case, counselor.
I think with Fidone, we can sit there and say, oh, we understand why it never looked the way we wanted it to. You had the double knee injury. Like, that's tough to come back from. And last year, I think everybody was kind of just happy. Not last year, 2 years ago, was kind of just happy to see that he made it through a season, right? Coach Rhule was. He said, hey, that's a huge win.
Does he look 6'4" and a quarter and 243?
He's a very lean 243.
Dude, his length.
Yeah.
The dude's arms might have been the longest reach of any tight end.
He's an incredibly lean 243.
And conversely, how about Warren with the shortest?
That's
It's
not going to hurt him that much because he's
don't
so
know.
productive.
I don't look.
I mean, I don't think it's going to hurt his draft stock that much because he's so productive.
We'll see.
But
so let's set the barometer though.
It's not going to help.
Most people are talking top 13, 14 for Warren. Was I seeing that?
Yeah, I think that's right.
Okay, so
Yeah.
that's
the barometer.
That's kind of where we're at.
So what do you think?
I don't know, but
Okay.
I'm saying I don't think he loves this weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you like switching to a Loveland guy or?
Well, I was never in on Warren.
Okay, fair.
So, I mean, I like a good player.
Yeah.
But sometimes, I mean, not that I wasn't a victim of this, but sometimes when you're a jack of all trades and not great at any one thing, sometimes it can hurt you. You need to be in the right system.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? So
my guy Mason Taylor looked good.
Yeah, there's a couple guys.
He looks smooth.
Yeah.
Like just real fluid movements.
Yep. But
yeah,
my guy,
yeah,
Arroyo, was also very, very good.
Had a nice day as well.
With the freaky measurables in terms of just his size. I don't mean freaky in terms of because there were only a couple of those this weekend.
Yeah, and not a ton at tight end.
I just can't get over some of these standing broad jumps.
Well, I mean, what, Neyor go 11-1?
It's incredible.
That's unbelievable.
But what I tell you day one when I came back from practice, day one.
You said NFL guy or NFL talent.
I said Sunday guy.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
I didn't watch him. Listen, I didn't watch him catch one thing. Not one. I just watched him in his drills because the wide receivers, when they're training, and I'm sure it'll be different now with Coach Shorts, but they do a lot of drill work and reps and drills, and it was early in practice because I don't like watching those guys, and that's not usually the part that I like to focus on. But I just watched his body movements and how effortless he was. I'm like, yep, the guy's got about 84-inch reach.
Yeah,
those are Sunday measurables.
Well, I mean, he measures at 6'4", 218. That's full Sunday. Big wide receiver.
Yeah.
Goes a 4.4 flat, 11-1, 40-inch vertical.
I just don't know if you know how far that is.
No, I mean, I'm pretty familiar with like combine measurements. Like that's a crazy.
The guys just, I'm not going to say routinely, but there were multiple 11s.
Yeah.
Like,
well, so the ones that I like,
freaky deeks,
depending on positions, broad jump and vertical are ones that I like a lot because they translate better to explosiveness than the 40 does.
Who's the fast guy that only jumped 30.5 inches? Was it Dylan Edwards? I have about 365 numbers in my head.
I know. I'm trying to keep them all true.
I want to say Dylan Edwards. TK, some of you fast texters.
Donovan? Donovan Edwards?
Did I say Dylan?
Yeah.
Yeah, Donovan Edwards. Because I think he ran 4.48s or 4.47s, but he only jumped 30.5 inches, which I was surprised.
So not him. He ran a 4.44 and ran 38.5 or jumped 38.5.
Who's the good? Somebody only jumped 30.5, and I was like,
Is it running back?
yeah.
All right, we'll see what we can find here.
Anyway, because usually there's a direct correlation.
Yes, because those are much better measures of explosiveness than a 40-yard dash.
Yeah.
Now you're going to get long speed there, and running back, unlike other positions, long speed actually does matter a little bit more. Running back, wide receiver, corner.
Kind of, but I do like from the 15 to the 50
Sure,
for
yeah.
running backs.
Yeah.
Because that's typically where you leave.
Yeah, where
plays
you're
on-
separating.
Yeah,
right?
where you leave plays on the field or not.
Because you're not going to really have straight line speed in the
like
first
a clear
10, 15.
hallway.
Yeah,
Right.
very often. So your first, unlike a defensive lineman or an offensive lineman, even though you're not having real clear runways, I do think that 10 split matters more for those guys.
I didn't love that offensive line group.
No.
It's thin.
So Simmons being healthy
It's a thin group.
is one of the biggest developments, and he didn't test or anything. It was just, hey, we like his progress on his health, because he might skip Campbell as number one tackle or number one offensive lineman off the board.
Yeah, I still don't think it's gonna be Campbell.
I don't think other people do now either, but he was sort of a default choice.
Yeah.
Because they didn't, like you said, I don't think people think of it as a very good group.
So you still have Simmons out there. We didn't see anything from Banks.
No.
Boy.
How's that one go?
Boy. Mr. Missouri. Impressive.
Yeah.
Impressive. Good violent hands. And I was with Rich Eisen. That drill, the punch, short set, get out and pull, run the alley, shoulder square. The guy at the end that was doing the directions, he's giving me anxiety.
Really?
Because he's at the very end of so it's like you're running at me down a little narrow hallway, and I tell you left or right. And I do it when I used to coach running backs all the times with bag drills and stuff. So you need to give a guy a chance to
make a move.
Yeah. They must have run into him like 4 times.
Yeah.
And Eisen kept yelling, "Point! Point!" It was giving him anxiety.
He's like,
And I don't know how many people stuck around to watch that offensive line drill, but if you did, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It took over.
Actually watching it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was so late.
It's like, hey,
And they kept running into him. I'm like, that's how big dudes having to change at the last millisecond. That's how people get hurt.
that's not ideal.
Yeah.
Maybe he was used to those running backs.
I just would have started to run him over.
just truck stick.
Yeah. I used to do it to Bo Ryan once because he thought he was a running back, but I knew he was going to be a defensive guy.
Yeah.
And he was really quick. And I would always give it to him at the last minute. After about the 3rd time doing the drill, he just ran straight over the bag. Those players thought it was so funny. I was hurt for 4 days. Literally 4 days. I thought he broke my hip.
Yeah.
And never let him see you sweat though.
Yeah.
Like, you good? Yep.
All good,
See
buddy.
how quick I got off the ground? They were laughing, kiki, and high-fiving. Like, I got you.
That's TB. I'm
Next
Ravi
year when I
Lulla.
heal up.
I'll say, I'm not going to do bags for a minute, but I got you. That's TB. I'm Ravi Lulla. More Hurrdat Sports Live coming up next. Wrapping up hour number 1 here on Hurrdat Sports Live. That's TB. I'm Ravi Lulla, reminding you, make sure you've got those seat belts fastened. They prevent injuries and save lives, but only if worn properly. Make it click. This message from the NDOT Highway Safety Office.
My man TK's on it. Jackson had the lowest vert for running backs at 32 flat. Check wide receivers, TK.
Wideouts.
Yeah.
It
surprised me.
There's a TK also had a good question.
No, he didn't.
He did. It was what is the connection between head coach Matt Rhule and the Grinch?
Oh, what do you think the connection is between? And I have a couple of heads of Matt Rhule.
Yeah, so you've got the
I got the one in the ball cap
where
he looks a little warm and fuzzy, kind of like a little kid. He's got the little bent brim. And then I have this one where it's kind of cut off and shaped, and he looks like he's mean mugging a little bit more.
He's kind of got the the flat top look going there.
Yeah, that's mostly because what he was wearing, what the picture was taken, he had to cut it out correctly.
I think you're looking at Caden Prather.
Yeah.
4.46 30-inch vert.
That's what it is.
And only a 9.6
Hey,
broad.
so listen. So I almost nailed the 40 time. I said, 4.47, 4.48. but he only jumped 30 inches, that's exactly who I'm talking about.
And
See, that a boy, TK.
no, I did that.
Oh,
That one was me.
well, he did. He texted me. It couldn't have been you. He texted me.
Did he text you, Prather?
Was that you? And I can't read.
No, I didn't text you at all. I just was
Hey,
looking
I
it up
can't
on
even use my goddamn fingers. Now.
the grill marks.
He did too. He's
Okay.
Prather.
Well, I looked it up independently, but good job on both of us, I
Yeah.
guess. No, so my theory on your
My cheek hurt. I was like, "What is wrong?"
yeah,
with
no,
this
you're sitting on your keys.
Got my tail kicked a lot this week. This is something sore. I
Yeah,
missed
like
it.
I said, that's a residual soreness.
Fudge.
No, I think head coach Matt Rhule's being the big bad Grinch with non-conference scheduling.
That.
He's being the big bad Grinch with the spring game.
That.
He's being the big bad Grinch with what else is there?
Fudge. You got the spring game.
You got non-cons.
Non-cons. We've been sitting on our money.
Oh,
You want us to be a big program? Let's go put our money where our mouth is.
go act like a big boy program.
He's elevated the coaches.
Mhm.
He's been tough in the off season. Like, yeah, that's pretty good. Like, there's this little he's a little more forthright and direct in the pressers. I told you we were lucky that he didn't have to speak last week. It'd have been even worse.
He might have been a little bit upset. Might have been a little cranky.
Yeah. Yeah. You can
Might have been a little grinchy.
very good. It's kind of obvious, but kind of not.
Yeah, I don't know that Grinch is the word.
I don't know if Coach Rhule would tell you that he was born with his heart 3 times. It's
Too small?
Yeah.
Well, I bet if they get to 8-9 wins this year, it'll grow 3 sizes.
I like being 3-0.
So I don't know why I've been saying this for years now.
Mhm.
I don't know why it takes our head coach to openly be mad at the conference scheduling number of games for people to be like, "Oh yeah, I get it." We act like the whole 8-9 to round robin I remember when I told the Big 12, I was like, "You dummies, you panicked over needing a championship game because it was Baylor and TCU."
Mhm.
I'm like, if it was Texas and Oklahoma, you'd be fine. Don't panic.
Yeah.
Like, well, we need a conference championship game, man, to even be in the discussion. We're going to
And
be
then
overlooked.
Cost them the next
And
year.
I'm like,
Cost them almost immediately.
you play, you guys play everybody.
Yeah, there's no reason.
No reason.
You've got a true champion.
Just chill. Wait this thing out.
Mhm.
We let more people to the party without even changing the dress code.
Yeah.
It's aggravating. It's going to dilute your It's going to dilute your gala.
Got a lot of people in sweatpants at the party.
Man. And so now he's saying it out loud.
Yeah. Which I appreciate because we said it out loud a couple weeks ago. And especially even while people are kind of.
That's as close as I've had to a rant maybe this year. But it's only still March. So give
So
me time.
we'll crank it up a little bit. Get that thing
Like,
cranked.
what are you guys mad at?
Yeah.
I hate that.
That whole macho BS drives me up the wall.
It's like, oh, we're going to play the best. Beat anybody.
Get LOL. I should know if I'm talking to an adult and they start with LOL, I probably should just keep it pushing.
Press.
Too old for that.
Pressing.
Too old for that.
No,
By the way, if you sign Fields as your quarterback this year, there's going to be some pressing, all right?
yeah.
Pressing a lot of furniture around the house. Nah.
We're going to have.
if you want to lock Pickens up.
Yeah.
Knock it off.
They probably need
you had a
to.
bad trade. You wallow in your own misery.
No, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that.
Don't bring your misery over to my house.
Listen, you're the one that brought up
I
Fields.
got enough.
What?
You,
It's in
you're,
passing.
you're the one that
It's
brought
in
up
passing.
Fields.
It's in passing. Let's try to keep it moving.
Where are we passing? Keep on pressing.
Hey, we're slowing by.
I would no, I think it is important to bring up again, since apparently now that Coach Rhule said it's valid, that
Are you being sarcastic?
a little bit. We shouldn't be doing the SEC any favors. This only helps them.
I was that last week
Yeah, I think so.
or the week before?
It's hard to tell.
Whatever
sometimes.
week it was, I was like, you guys are idiots.
Mhm.
I can't anything other. There was no angle in which to argue that.
You hear how he said it too? He said, I'd have to be out of my mind
It's like,
to play those games. He goes,
but yet for 3 days, whether it was talking heads or whatever, message boards or my Twitter, I'm like, You guys can't be serious.
Mhm.
You can't be serious.
So I think there's a couple camps here of where they land. And you've brought this up before, of people just being like,
camp, as in like Pendleton? What do you mean camps?
Camps as in entrenchments of where people land, right? So there's this camp over here of
You do know what entrenchment means, don't you?
so you're living in a trench, right? No,
My algorithm had a preview for a movie called Red Dot.
yeah,
I'd never seen it, but
it's like a sniper movie.
well, it was about a couple that got sniped.
Well, yeah,
I went and read it on Shane. What does IMDb stand for?
Internet Movie Database.
there we go.
I read it on IMDb, and yeah, apparently that couple had not been nice, and guy picked them off as they were camping.
Right there.
Yeah,
Gotta be careful.
you know why it's called Red Dot.
Yeah, that's why I asked if it was about snipers.
You would shut it off though, because as I was kind of reading through it, they did something real bad to the dog.
Oh no, we don't do that.
Yeah.
We take care of dogs around here. We don't do that. Speaking of which, I saw a photo of you with a puppy at a West Side game.
Oh, that's how, man. Your boy was out there sitting with the students
I
at the
saw
girls'
that.
district final
And
game.
you're just like, can't pet that dog.
It was one of my other players. It was his aunt's therapy dog,
Okay. I was
and
like,
they were holding it poorly, and I was traumatized because the poor thing was shaking.
you're like, give me that
It's like,
dog.
"Wait, man, it needs support underneath. He's
like-
little.
It's like a baby. You gotta
So
give
I
it
was-
support.
I was teaching him how to hold the dog.
Well, you look like you did a bang up
Did
job.
Austin take that?
I think so.
He's so-
Somebody did.
he's so bad. Naughty.
We'll be back with Sam McKewon coming up next. Kicking off hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Live, presented by Centris Federal Credit Union. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We are joined now by Sam McKewon from the Omaha World Herald. What's up, Sam?
Hey guys, how you doing?
Sam, how we doing?
I'm all right. I'm doing good today.
Hey, do you understand this whole weather thing that's supposed to happen in the next 48 hours? Because I don't. Is it a qual? What is it? They're calling it something, but I don't. Do you understand what's getting ready to happen? Allegedly.
Yeah, I think it's probably just, it's dependent on whether it gets cold enough to snow. If it does, then it's going to be basically kind of like a blizzard. If it doesn't, then it's going to be, like sideways rain, which I don't know, maybe worse. I'm not sure which one is worse there, but or there could be no precipitation and then it's just wind. So it's there's a lot of question marks right now about that. It's going to be a game time decision for what God has in store for us in the weather.
Yeah, 1A in terms of the greatest variable ever created. Number 1 is people. 1A is weather.
Mm.
All right, just
Yeah.
make no predictions. But were you surprised that they got out ahead of it and are doing all the high school district finals tonight? You will be
Smart.
playing on Monday. Get that out of the way.
That's smart.
Oh.
That's smart. Wide open, Class A boys this year.
Isn't that something?
It's probably not going to be wide open in the girls. Northwest is probably going to take that thing home, and Scott's probably going to take it home in B, and Lincoln Christian's probably going to take it home in C1. So, like, the top 3 classes in A, B, and C on the girls' side, there are clear favorites. On the boys' side, it is more open.
Mm. Sam, before we get into too much else, I want to stick with basketball here in Nebraska. Just that loss to Minnesota, I know a lot of people, and DB and I were talking about this last week and again a little bit this morning. A lot of people are going to view that as a bad loss, and I think the committee is going to view that as a bad loss. Can two things be true at once? That, yes, metrically it's a bad loss, but matchup-wise you could maybe sort of see it coming?
No.
Mm.
Nope.
Just me.
I don't think so. I think
call me Gilligan.
He's on an island.
No, I don't. And that's not to say I didn't think they might not play well or that Minnesota wasn't a challenging team to play. Nothing excuses the first 25 minutes of that game. There's nothing that you can draw up. If you had told me 25 minutes into the game, Minnesota's ahead 45-41, and it's been kind of a streaky game, and man, Nebraska just can't put them away. And at the end of the game, it's a 2-point win for Minnesota. That I can believe. What happened in the first 25 minutes of that game are not. They're just not on the menu, and that was really disappointing. So, like, it is somewhat how you lose. Like, if yes, You can lose a 2-point game to Minnesota, and if you had told me that, I would have been like, well, hey, in this league, that can happen. And Minnesota's not half bad, but the way that it unfolded, and Minnesota's willingness to collapse once things turned, just tells me that Nebraska squandered an incredible opportunity on Saturday with the way it played in its first 25 minutes.
Sam, if you're okay, so the staff and Coach Hoiberg in particular, because it falls at the head coach's feet. When you watch this team play, how do you separate the ability to come out and not play very hard, but to be able to find ways to like claw back in it, where both have a little bit to do with character and preparation? How do you split the onus when you watch how Nebraska can do this time and time again?
I think you would just have to ask Fred Hoiberg and watch his reaction in the press conference on Saturday. And the word he uses is sick. And then the way that he says, it's the body language, and we get slapped around a little bit and our heads are like, he's telling you his own interpretation of that situation. And I think what he's saying is, his team should be over this. And there was an opportunity again early in that game to get way up on Minnesota and just stay there. The Nebraska women were on the road yesterday, but similar to that. It's like the Nebraska women, Nebraska women lost a game on senior day to Washington that did not surprise me. Washington is playing for a lot. Washington won again yesterday. Washington is a good basketball team, maybe better than Nebraska. And the game got away from Nebraska late. They had some injuries. They lost by 18 or whatever. The reverse on Saturday with Nebraska's men's team is different. Even though they only lost by 2, you must fault the preparation with which they came out. And you can't, there's something there where if that's the way you come out and play, and then to start the second half, you're only down 8 and the thing gets down, or 9, and it gets to 19 in 5 minutes. Man, there's just something not going right with the veteran players on this team. This is not a group of freshmen. This isn't John Calipari's freshman team at Kentucky. This is senior. In many cases, fifth-year seniors. In one case, a guy's 24 years old. That just can't happen. And so they're in a tough spot. They're going to go to Ohio State. And what's kind of funny, or I don't know if it's funny, I won't be surprised if they win. I won't be surprised if they lose by 32. I don't think that Fred exactly knows what his team's going to decide before they get on the floor. And that's a tough spot for a coach to be in. Very tough spot. And you feel for him a little, but he did pick these guys. So that they've made the team that he put together.
Sam, what do you do with the Creighton performance on Saturday? Obviously, Nebraska came out, didn't play how they wanted to on Saturday. Creighton went out,
right,
didn't play how they wanted to on Saturday either, but the stakes seemed very different. But it's coming also off of a game against DePaul where Greg McDermott was pretty vocally unhappy with how his team played. What do you do with Creighton's performance the last couple of games as they're sort of heading down the home stretch in a different way than Nebraska is?
Defense isn't quite as tight as they'd like it to be, obviously, and they don't want to foul. And I understand that. They have a certain style that they like to play, but the way that DePaul and Xavier got points, I think, is probably not thrilling to Greg McDermott, and he's probably going back and wanting to have a conversation about what it looks like to tighten it up. So you get Seton Hall and Butler. I think they'll beat Seton Hall. Butler can get you on any given day, and Butler did it last year to a Creighton team that I view to be slightly better than the one they have now. So I think you have to be careful in the last couple of games. Let me say this, and this is where I'm an island. I think 5 Big East teams should be in the NCAA tournament. I think Xavier belongs, and I think Villanova belongs. I think I said something very similar to that last year about Providence and Villanova. I just think the Big East Basketball Conference is a much more difficult conference than it's being given credit for. So I think 6 teams should be in, because Marquette, UConn, Creighton, I guess
St.
it would be the St. John's, and then 2 more. And no one else believes that. Like, there's a feeling that it's going to be 4. It's going to be kind of a hard 4. Xavier's going to have to claw to get to 5. But the reality is I think that league is an incredibly good basketball league. And if Xavier doesn't make the NCAA tournament, well, then I'll pick them to win whatever tournament they have now, the Crown or the NIT or whatever they want to do. So, that's part of it. I think Xavier, imagine how good Xavier would be if Desmond Claude was there, and he's not. And so, like, they would be, a 20, 24, 25 win team. And so, they're good. And Creighton ran into a buzzsaw. And so you tip your cap and you move on. And, what you do also know, though, is barring an extraordinary run in New York, like they beat Marquette and they beat St. John's, they're probably not going to be higher than a 7 or an 8. They're probably going to be an 8 seed. And that puts them in line to play the number 1 seed in the second round. And I can tell you who won't be happy about that, the number 1 seed. Because if Creighton plays its very best and they're locked in defensively, they can beat almost any team in the country.
Mm-hmm. Sam, let me ask, I want to stay kind of with, I want to go back to Nebraska basketball here for a second and kind of the emotional psyche. Over this long a time, and in essence a season, the first week into March, you kind of feel like you know who this team is in regards of you don't know what you're going to get. I got to go back to something Caravan said about Connecticut, and he said it out loud, and maybe it's easier to say that when your coach is coming off back-to-back national titles, where he says, you know what, this is about us. We need to be dialed in. We need to be better. When you look at Nebraska and the unevenness, where it's in essence a crapshoot over which 3 guys are going to play well on any given night, if you want it to fall at Coach Hoiberg's feet, is it about the roster itself or the guys handling business on said roster? Where do you start?
Well, so part of the head coach's job in basketball each year is to develop a vision for how you're going to put the team together and then decide how you're going to play. And so I know that Hoiberg takes full whatever for that. Then, you put the guys, you assemble them on the team, and you hope that you put them in position to do the things that they want to do. What I would say about this particular team, and, is, again, a lot of old guys. At some point, and maybe Fred's done this, maybe he hasn't, I think you go to him and say, this is your team, guys. You're going to have to decide to hold each other accountable and decide where this thing's going to go. And, Hoiberg's too good of a guy to say, I'm getting my $4.25 million either way, and I'm not going anywhere. So this is on you. And, that's a coaching move. That's a button that you push. But I think that may be where eventually you got to go. The flip side of the coin is, so that's on the guys. But then the flip side of the coin is you construct the roster. And this is just my opinion. I'm probably wrong. I think Fred Hoiberg is an offensive coach. I think he's in that probably genius tier. Go get guys that can score. It's going to make you feel better as a coach to get guys that can execute the things that you want. And if you sacrifice a little bit on defense, you know what you can do there? You can coach that up. But you cannot coach up some of the things that they can't do. And the reality is they brought players to the program who really struggled to shoot. And I understand that maybe they struck out on a player or two prior to bringing the guys that they brought in. But I will revisit Casey. And the reality is that Casey started playing more in his junior year at Nebraska out of necessity, because they did not play him that much right away. It started. And then all of a sudden he comes in the last 10 games of that regular season, and that's when it clicked. And, I think Hoiberg probably learned something from that, and then the following year, Casey played all the time. And he had to, because he was the difference maker. And Rink Mass too, but Rink's coming back, and that's great. But Casey was a big reason why, and it's because he could make shots from everywhere on the court. I probably would have started a CG earlier. They haven't really done it. I'm not sure why. I don't know. I'm not a basketball coach. I don't have a fraction of his intellect. But I do feel like sometimes you got to match a roster to your personality. And Fred's he's got a great offensive mind. And the last two teams that he had with Derek Walker, and then last year with Rank and Kasich, they could do things. They could play 400 level offense, and they're kind of at 200 level right now. Brice Williams has to carry a lot of the load, and he does a lot of it's just time to clear out because only Brice is going to score. And sometimes what's funny, I don't know if it's not funny. Sometimes Brice is like, not sure. I don't know. He kind of passes the ball, and our beat writer Wilson Moore and I were talking yesterday, and he's like, there was a possession where, we were watching it, and Brice kind of passes to Connor, who passes to Raleigh, who passes to Brice, and back to Connor, and Connor just shoots a three, and it's like, Brice, you got to take game over, Brice. It's your team, and so those are the moments this last week. At some point you got to give the keys to Brice and say, hey, this is your car, buddy. You want to go to the NCAA tournament 2 times in a row and be a legend at this school?
I'm listening.
Do it.
You know what's funny in hearing that though? I'm thinking real time in this whole offense versus defensive identity thing, and then you land the plane at the end of the answer with Brice. I still find myself wanting to be more of a presence defensively because he's capable. I really, really do. That's the first thing I think of when I think Brice. It's not take the game over more offensively. It's, man, you're an elite level defender. I think you can do more. That's kind of is that that's the, and maybe therein lies the conflict of watching this team, right? Who are they and what do they do well? Because even after all that answer, Sam, I'm like, man, go defend. You're a good defender.
Yeah, I understand that the team's identity is built around defense, and that's somewhat because it has to be. They can't just go up the floor like Purdue and score, 1.4 points per possession in a game. That's just not something they're capable of doing right now, easily. And so he said it on Saturday. He's like, we're not a very good team when we're taking the ball out of the basket. And translated, what that means is, when the other team makes a basket, we have to play half-court offense, and God help us. That's what he's not saying it quite that starkly, obviously, but
I actually think that's why he didn't call the timeout.
Well, he didn't have one.
Yeah, that's true. That's right. That's right.
Well, what, you mean with 4.1 seconds left?
Yes.
Yeah, they didn't.
Yeah, they didn't have one.
And now there's a lot to unpack with that play too. They said on the broadcast they didn't have one. I believe that. Now there's a lot to unpack on that play too, because for whatever reason, the wrong guy's inbounding it. Connor Seagen probably shouldn't be inbounding it. Did they forget that the clock doesn't run in the second half? They have 5 seconds to inbound the ball there. They got an opportunity to call Andrew Morgan back. Andrew, come back, inbound the ball, get the ball to Brice, let him get up the floor. They had time to do that. They didn't. Brice points, tells, I think it's Jawan, pass the ball to Connor, or I pass the ball to Sam Hoiberg, and then Brice is kind of trailing the play. Sam's going up the right side. He has to pass to Andrew Morgan. That's less than ideal situation at the end. If it were me, well, if I'm not, it ain't me. So who are we kidding? There are other players that would say, just give me the ball. I'll shoot it. And he might not have gotten off a very good shot, but it's Brice Williams. So you never know if it'll go in. And we saw 2 plays last week with Michigan State and Utah where guys basically took the ball and they heaved it at half court and they made it because these guys make these shots now. And I think I would have rather seen Brice just take the ball there and do what he could versus the passing it to Hoiberg, who passed it to Morgan, who's got to take a shot he's never taken in his life. I'm guessing Andrew doesn't practice that shot very much, whereas I'm guessing Brice practices half-court shots with some regularity. So, that's another moment where it's a frustrating team to watch. Obviously, people want so badly for this to be successful. The fans are great, and Hoiberg's good. This isn't about Hoiberg. It's about you. It's about creating a team in the offseason that can come in and do the things that you as a coach love to call, which is to be an offensive coach.
Sam, it's kind of funny. We lost the great Gene Hackman last week, and the first thing I thought of when you're saying that is Jimmy Chitwood in the huddle said, "I'll take the shot. I'll
Right.
make it." Right?
Right.
Like,
right.
there's a certain part of it, and I've sort of talked about this sort of throughout the year a little bit, is just even if it's the right basketball player or whatever, at some point Brice Williams just has to know that it's his shot to take, right? Like that's sort of like good, bad, indifferent. It's his shot to take.
Yeah. I mean, well, it could be whoever's shot you want it to be. Counter Season can shoot it too. And I had no issue with that shot last Monday. None. That was the right decision based on what was in front of Brice and where Connor's at on the floor. There's nothing wrong with that shot. And then on the last one, Burkie's, he's the only one that can catch the ball. So, he's got to take it. And so, like, I understand the two against Michigan. I think there was an opportunity to do something just slightly different against Minnesota. Here's an example of the coach and the identity thing. You can go back through the history of Rick Pitino, and I'm not going back to Providence when they shot more threes than anybody. But, I mean, his time at Louisville up through now at St. John's. You go back and look at their three-point shooting, and this is a team and a program that did not need to shoot 37% to win 30 games because he had created an identity, and he's like, this is how we're going to be, how we're going to play. We're going to get these kinds of players who are athletic and tough and defenders and rebounders and all these things. And then he built programs that did that. And look what he's done at St. John's. He's done it again. And he's found a way to say, hey, they can't shoot. They can't throw it in the ocean, but they're tough. And they fit who he wants them to be. And so he's comfortable in that realm. And all I'm saying is that, like, if Janowski and Frager are the shooters that I've heard they might be, then maybe they're going to be better next year because they chose to redshirt those guys. But otherwise, they need guys that can make shots so that Fred can be full Fred and not, hey, I got to try to figure this thing out with a masterful defensive effort against Michigan. Their effort's incredible against Michigan, and they fall short because they don't make shots. And one thing I did think was going to be hard to do was duplicate that effort that they had against Michigan, because it must have just been heartbreaking to play that hard and then not make a shot. That's got to be tough. And so they can play hard. We saw it against Michigan, but it's hard to sustain when you don't make baskets, which is why they got to recruit guys that can.
Sam, I'm going to get you out of here on combine thoughts, and you can go general or specific, but I want to start with, as somebody that plays an integral role in Super Six and understanding high school football and the whole this Council Bluffs, Omaha, and you've been around for a while. You know the sentiments on Fidone. You watch what happened this weekend. Is there a part of you? I don't want to ask a leading question, so I'll simply just say, how do you feel about kind of the journey of the start versus the culmination on what happened in Indianapolis with Nebraska's guys, and in particular Fidone?
I don't know how you could be anything but happy for Fidone, for sure. I mean, he's worked really hard, and he's earned it. This is a guy that probably could have went and made a lot of money. He could have made some money at Nebraska, but he could have went and made a lot of money somewhere else in college this year. And I think he wanted to go take a shot at the NFL. I think he was ready. Instead of going and learning some other offense or, trying to figure it out in this one, when it's obvious that they've got receivers that they want to get on the field, I think he was like, no, I'm going to go to the NFL. I'm going to do it there. I'm going to make my way. And I respect that. I really do. I think, he's doing it the hard way. He had 2 injuries that kept him out for 2 seasons. And then he came back and thought he played pretty well that first season back. I think this recent year, they didn't maybe utilize him as well as they could have. And you may have thoughts on that too. Robinson doesn't surprise me. I thought he would probably do that. Tommy Hill didn't do anything. And then Neyor, well, that's why he was at Nebraska in the first place. It's because they knew that he has an incredible speed, size, skill, all those things. I think he probably needs to work on catching the football and getting open. Like that's the area where he can improve. But that's the reason he got invited to the combine is because of what he did. Like, he's an incredible athlete. And so I thought Nebraska got quite a bit out of him this year. There's other people that are frustrated. And, of course, he dropped the pass at Iowa, but that's not on Nebraska. That's on him. So I thought they got quite a bit out of him this year, given what he had struggled to do at Texas. I do feel like there was a little bit more that they could have gotten out of Fidone this year, and not because of anything Thomas did. I think they could have used him a little bit better, especially in the red zone.
That is Sam McKewon from Omaha World Herald. Sam, we appreciate the time as always. We'll talk to you next week.
Take care.
Thanks, Sam.
But I'll say before we head to break here,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, what were you going to say? Because that's weird that we were going to be on the same page.
Oh, well, I was just I made a little bit
I didn't want to go to break yet either.
I kind of made
Here's what we do. We break.
I kind of made a face when he made the comment that he said about Fidone, about I don't know how anybody could be anything but happy for him. And listen, I'm happy for him. I want him to do well. I want him to make the NFL. But there's a large contingent of people that are not that happy. So I
think it's because they want to be right.
I don't know if it's
and they're not going to be.
I don't know if it's because they want to be right. I think, and I was sort of
I highly doubt it's because they dislike him.
No, yeah, it's not that. I think there's, and I brought this up with Neyor a little bit, I think Nebraska fans get very frustrated when they see guys that are going to play in the NFL and possibly have better NFL careers than they did in college. I think that drives Nebraska fans crazy, and it kind of should. Like when you've got that level of ability on your roster and it doesn't translate into production, that's incredibly frustrating. So I don't know if they're not happy for Thomas Fidone, but I do think there's a contingent of Nebraska fans that aren't happy about how this played out.
Well, I mean,
and that's a different thing. I get that.
Sure. And I have to be careful because I don't want to read a couple of comments and then say, oh, that's how people feel.
Sure.
Right? Because I go back to the painter thing where we had the fantastic discussion, which maybe was one of our better shows, about, hey, the fans aren't the ones that tweet or whatever, and kind of, made this distinction about, like, let's take a look at the things that haven't gone well and what can we change there. And sometimes just be positive.
Just be supportive.
Now, I love kind of your response initially about that day where it's like, okay, but we're not just going to be like, stand by the road and cheer regardless of what happens.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
I understand that. But what I will say is, even with a couple of comments in here, right, it was, well, Neyor single-handedly cost us 2 games, which is absolutely untrue.
Mm-hmm.
But I know
there were some critical errors.
The person that said that is definitely not alone.
For sure. Especially with Neyor. Neyor more than Fidone, I would say.
Like not alone.
Yeah.
Although I do feel like there are people that never came back around on TF.
Yeah, and I think there just wasn't enough for them on the field to make them come around.
Because you know what happened with the whole transition, and this quietly happened. And I'm going to set this up. We'll take a break. I'll tell you what quietly happened when Sat went back to tight ends full time and Holgerson came over on offense. He kind of disappeared. Other guys emerged. There was a lot of I told you so's, and then he came back.
Yep.
I want to get into that because, again, you don't get any of his life and what happened over the weekend without his personality in it.
Yeah. I think the thing that frustrates Nebraska, though, is that personality didn't really get Nebraska anything.
Yeah.
I think there is a lot there, though. That's DB. I'm Ravi. Lulla. More Hurrdat Sports Live coming up next. We're back here on Hurrdat Sports Live. That's DB. I'm Ravi. Lulla. We're presented by our friends over at Centris Federal Credit Union. Having someone to talk about your finances can be a game changer. That's why Centris Federal Credit Union has partnered with Green Path Financial Wellness to provide free personalized financial counseling services to their members. Whether you need advice on just simple budgeting or debt management, Green Path and Centris are here to help you reach your financial goals because they're not just about getting your business. They're trying to help you get your financial priorities in order. Go check out centrisfcu.org for more information about their partnership with Green Path. Centris, of course, federally insured by NCUA. DB,
what's up?
We're getting on to something there before the break.
Yeah, and it's funny too. We probably should have saved the off-air talk because we feel vastly different about. We're on totally opposite ends of the spectrum.
We are, yeah. Well, I think there's there's a, because you were talking about some people kind of making it personal with Fidone and the way people.
Even there to some degree with, I think it was Husker Dominator. It was like he single-handed. I'm like, no, he didn't.
I think people get really frustrated, and I agree. I do think there was. I'm going to stick with Fidone though, right? Because there's another local media member, Josh Peterson, a guy we both know, who had I think a fairly well-known interaction online.
Now,
with,
full disclosure, this is brand new to me.
Okay, so I think it was last year
because I just asked you. I go, was it public?
Yeah, so I think it was on Twitter.
Okay.
And it was there. Josh had said something. I don't remember if it was online or on the show. And then Fidone had answered back to him. And so
directly?
Yes.
Okay.
I believe so. If I'm remembering correctly, and if somebody else remembers, they can correct me, but I believe that's how it was.
But that's too big. That's too big.
Big names in the.
Josh has a following, and
obviously Fidone does
too,
as well.
Social media,
and
that's why I wanted to know if it was on social media.
I believe it was.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know if it started on air and ended up on social media, but I believe there was a social media component to it. And so I think part of the reason sometimes it does get personal is it sort of felt like in the answer back from Fidone,
I gotta go back and look at
it. Felt personal in his retort to Josh, right? It wasn't about like, hey, like you're not really understanding what's happening here, blah, blah, blah. Like it wasn't football. And I'm not saying it has to be, but if you're going to open the door to sort of attack might be too strong of a word, but a personal retort, then you sort of open the door for people to get personal back. And I don't think that Josh did. I don't really remember. But in general, it feels like that sort of opens.
So the responses to TF you felt like were personal.
I felt the TF response to Josh was personal.
Oh, okay. All right, let's make okay.
So that kind
of setting the stage for this. The entrenchments.
And I'm not saying you should, right? I'm not saying you should go there. I don't think Fidone probably should have gone there in the way that he responded to Josh. I don't think other people should respond to Fidone the way they have, or Neyor even for that matter. I do think when you open that door, though, and you're publicly out there, like Fidone has been in some occasions, it sort of does blur what is personal versus on the field and whatever.
Hold that thought just for a second.
Sure.
Okay. Open the door for personal whatever. Did you see what happened with Zeke Mayo this weekend?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so Zeke Mayo on social media had the horrendous shot selection down the stretch. He owned it. Said, hey, this on me. I got to play better basketball. Yada, yada, yada.
Mm-hmm.
Mistake or not a mistake? How do you look at that?
I think that's fine.
Anecdotally, right?
I don't have a problem with it.
Jerk, right?
Yeah.
So you got total sacrificial lamb with Jayhawk fans.
Mm-hmm.
For the most part on social media. May not be able to come back for it. I mean, there was some, of course, for whatever the reason, race gets involved and there's name calling, and it's just like, okay. So I go back to the painter thing about, again,
just be supportive, just be a good fan.
Or you cannot say anything.
Sure, that's an option.
Like
an option we forget exists sometimes.
You can just not have feedback.
Yeah.
Believe me, we got a peer in the media that I would man. But I just move on.
Yeah.
Right? Because me saying something to this guy every time he says something I don't like, I told you I equate it to, that's like me taking cyanide, expecting him to die.
Yeah.
Like that's not, I don't need to carry the negative burden, right?
For sure.
I don't want to give anybody else power over my decision making.
Yeah.
Right? Doesn't mean I don't feel that way though. But I just don't say anything. Now, if I go to the doctor next week, that's not going to happen. But if I ever went to the doctor, it'd be like, dude, what is weird, like dying inside? What's happening? And it's because I'm carrying vitriol. All right, fine, you win. But you don't have to say
no.
Like that's like C on the test thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it didn't seem like a ton of people were like, hey, go get him, he's ours. Is it because you don't think he was ours? Or are you really right about they're going to be better without us? And so I think we have a hard time with that.
I think it can be a little bit of both, right? I think a lot of it is there's a huge frustration anytime Nebraska players, whatever, have players, coaches, both really, I think, move on to somewhere else and are better than they were here. And it's like, well, why couldn't they be that here? And sometimes we think it's an us problem. Sometimes we think it's a them problem. But either way, it's frustrating, right? And then there is part of it with Fidone where I do think he never. I mean,
Do you think Josh is his
yeah, I think that's fair. That's generally how I remember
Okay,
it.
okay.
I think that's an accurate.
And Josh is usually, he's
Yeah, he's usually
I could try,
pretty
yeah,
straight up.
yeah.
But you brought it up last week with Fidone especially. Neyor makes sense because he wasn't here that long. You know, I think we sort of with transfers, we don't always.
I even think we struggled with Cam. If Cam Jurgens wasn't all pro, like the revisionist history on how we remember him would be different.
But again, he feels like he's better as a pro than he was at Nebraska. That's how it seems. I don't know if that's true, especially his last year and a half at Nebraska, but that's how we feel about it, right? I don't think very many people his first couple years at Nebraska would have been like, "Oh yeah, that guy's an all-pro." Now that's one of the things Scott Frost got right, is the calling out of Cam Jurgens as being that type of guy. But I do think with Fidone especially, because he was here for so long and didn't play because of the injuries, and then when he did play, didn't really give you a ton. I do feel, and then you also have the public persona of.
How many receptions did he have last year?
I'd have to look it up. I don't have off the top of my head.
Were
I would guess under 400 yards a total of receiving yards, though.
you like top 2, top 1 in receiving?
Yeah, but is there any receiver the Nebraska fans feel good about this year?
I just sometimes I ask that question just to take self-inventory in the moment.
Sure,
Sometimes we just got to get over ourselves.
maybe. But I think you put it all in the same package of
Okay.
he's out there pretty publicly, kind of clapping back at people. He didn't live up to expectations, regardless of what numbers he had this year. He didn't live up to expectations of what he was as a recruit, right? Is that fair?
Although you would think 4 stars get drafted.
I mean, production.
4 stars get drafted.
Yeah.
Okay.
But his production at Nebraska didn't live up to what we would expect out of the number one tight end in the class.
I think but if you want to be that linear, back at you. With a guy that's ranked like that in high school, what's the expectation level?
Didn't make the NFL.
Okay.
Now, and I can also go, hey, it's not like Nebraska's quarterback situation last year with Sims and Harburg and everything else was going on, allowed for a lot of production from receivers. So we can make that argument all day. I get that. This is not a Thomas Fidone in a vacuum thing. But if we're trying to figure out why people feel conflicted or a certain way about Thomas Fidone or Isaiah Neyor or whoever else, I think that's part of the equation, is the production. If you've got a guy who comes out, is hugely productive, and Nebraska doesn't win as much as they want them to or whatever, I think it's easier to root for that guy even if things didn't go great. I think if there's a guy that comes from off the radar, he's Heinrich Harburg, I think, is more beloved than Thomas Fidone. Fair?
100%.
Not even close, right?
Yeah.
Is Heinrich Harburg ever going to, I think it's a longer shot that Heinrich Harburg plays in the NFL than Thomas Fidone. Not saying he won't. He's physically super gifted. But
he'll test better.
Fair, right? But Thomas Fidone's path to the NFL feels a little more direct right now because he's not doing
Natural.
a little more natural, right? Not doing a position switch, not doing all that, right? You've got a guy in Heinrich Harburg, though, was not highly recruited, was not highly touted, didn't really ever think he may never play prior to last year. That's a guy that because of the expectations, we're going to feel vastly different about him. And what does he do publicly? What is his persona publicly?
H2?
Yeah.
He's well received.
Salt of the earth, well received, never says
unselfish.
never says a crossword to anybody, ultimate teammate guy, right? And so you ask the question, hey, you don't get this life without Thomas Fidone in it, right? You don't get that version of him making the NFL and overcoming injuries and stuff like that without his competitiveness that also leads him to make some comments online and stuff like that. My question is, what is the benefit that Nebraska fans got from that mentality? That would be my question. What's the positive? For him, I get the positive, right? He overcame, he came through, he's going to have a chance to play in the NFL. But for Nebraska fans, what did they get from it?
I don't know.
I want to say nothing.
And that would be close to correct, I think. They didn't get, and so that's why it's hard to accept the competitiveness and kind of the mean
For
streak
who?
for fans. For Nebraska fans, I think it's hard to embrace him with the competitiveness and the mean streak and kind of the edge because it doesn't feel like as a fan base we got anything from it.
Okay, so generally speaking, I think this is how we feel about the program. The individual player
Mhm.
is pretty easy to pick at too because of the tangible stuff that, like, you're bringing to my attention.
Mhm.
When I'm listening to this, let's assume you're right.
Mhm.
I feel like this is kind of the back and forth between fans and the program too. If the program, generally speaking, was Fidone,
Sure.
I think this is how we feel. We're not getting back out of the relationship.
Fair. Yeah.
You know, like it's the classic, I like you more than you like me.
Yeah.
So in order to protect myself, I'm just going to keep saying out loud how much or how upset you make me, or I don't like you, or
That's why I worry about the spring game thing. Because Nebraska fans, I think, feel like they're giving more to the program than they're getting back. And, okay, you start to win, you feel like you're getting a ton back. You don't worry about a spring game or Tennessee or anything else, right? But when you're not getting those wins, it feels like you're just giving even less to this entity, this fan base that continues to give and give and give. I do think it's a very similar dynamic to what we're talking about with Fidone. It doesn't feel like Nebraska fans got anything back. And yeah, it's that same attitude that's going to let him have a chance to play on Sundays. But Nebraska fans had to endure not really endure, but they had to deal with some of the other stuff. And it doesn't really feel like that competitiveness ever got Nebraska fans anywhere.
okay, so you want an emotional return on your investment.
Yeah, that's all fans want.
But it's wins.
Right, but until the wins come, it's nice to have the other stuff. It kind of
What is that?
it's a Band-Aid. That's all.
Oh, it's wins.
Oh, that's the only thing that actually fixes it. Yeah. But I said in place of wins, you like the Band-Aids. Because what else are you going for? It's either that or you go home. And nobody wants that.
Cheering for guys to do well.
Guys that do well for you, though.
Well, that's a lousy proposition.
I mean, hey, you don't like how it gets transactional sometimes. A lot of times it is.
I'm listening.
We'll be back with more Hurrdat Sports Live. Welcome back, Hurrdat Sports Live. As we wrap up hour number 2, that's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. Getting into this conversation about kind of the way Nebraskans perceive the program and some of the players within it. Going over to the YouTube chat, Josh says, no, I don't care about other stuff. Just give me wins. Fair. I think that's a very common kind of rhetoric here. Johnny Pig says, Ravi's spot on. Nebraska fans have had far too long to think about what they view the problems in the program. Winning will fix all of that, nothing more. And I brought up an analogy.
That's more me. Than
Yeah,
you.
yeah. I don't think that was more what
I thought of
DB
him
was.
this weekend. My buddy Brett gave me some shoulder.
Oh, it was a
some
pork shoulder?
bacon.
Yeah.
I can smell it through the vacuum seal.
You excited?
It's exciting.
What are you going to do with it?
Eat it.
Well, are you going to do anything special with it? You just got to cook it up?
It's exciting.
Probably eat it with eggs.
Just some breakfast? Some little brekkie?
I can eat that anytime.
Yeah.
There's probably only about 7-8 strips though, but they're fatties.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a sitting.
Almost like pork belly.
Yeah,
Dude, I love pork belly.
me too.
I'll take pork belly over bacon any
Me
day.
too. There's a particular place around town
Mhm.
that this week, and Les brought up a good point because he's like a beef connoisseur.
Mhm.
That there's a place around town that's got $4.99 a pound for 80/20.
Mm.
I haven't seen $4.99 for ground beef
It's been a while.
for a minute.
I used to go through a lot of ground beef, and this is a couple years ago now, and about $4.99 was the price I'd look for.
89.
$4.99, $4.99,
Oh,
$4.89,
yeah.
what?
Yeah, I
$5
haven't-
basically.
haven't
It's been a couple years, I think.
It's been a minute.
Yeah.
So I sent it over to him because he's traveling. He was out in western Nebraska, but my man Brice turned me on to it, and I'm like, I think this is good,
Mhm.
but I haven't had to buy ground beef. Like I'm dangerously low on beef now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and but I couldn't restock with a cow because of the air conditioning unit.
Mhm.
So I'm like, I forgot a good number.
Oh, for what? Like per pound?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that's a good number.
I think so. Yeah. It's what I was, again, like I said, it's what I was looking for a couple years ago.
Then he made me a little gun shy because this morning he was like,
I don't know. I may worry about quality. I was like,
Yeah. I do go, because I think I was doing 80-20 because you get to like 90-10, 93-7. It's a little too
no,
lean.
I want good fat.
Yeah.
I want good fat.
You get a little too lean there. You don't get the flavor and stuff that you want on that. So, no, I get that. I think that's a pretty good number.
So I'm just going back to this deal.
So I'll let you think about it here for a second. I gave you an analogy offline, right?
Well, there were several, and I was perplexed.
But there was I think the relationship between Nebraska and its fan base is right now sort of like a bad relationship between like romantic partners, right? Where you've got one person, and this isn't all of the fan base, but I do think it is a section of the fan base that kind of deludes themselves into thinking the relationship is better than it is, right? Nebraska, let's be honest here. Josh said this earlier, not a good return on the emotional
So
investment.
you were a team Josh this morning.
He's
weren't
riding with me this morning. He's
I told you. He's not always going to say what you want, but usually there's some
truth to it.
there's some gunk in there you can take with you.
But and I think he disagrees with me all the time. So this is,
But that's how we started 2 years ago.
so it's probably a one-off. That's okay though.
No, I'm telling you, he's all right.
But there hasn't been real good return on the emotional investment from program back to fans he said about a decade. I think that's fair because we always say 20 years. It hasn't been that bad for 20 years. The past decade, I think is fair. But you do have this situation where fans, and I agree with him, and I agree with Johnny Pig, wins is the only thing that really solves it, right?
On the emotional return.
Yes. But much like some people do in romantic relationships, they will fool themselves into thinking the little sprinklings of affection here and there,
Getting flowers.
getting flowers, going out on
He
a
took
date
you out
every
to
once in a
dinner.
while, whatever, right? He brought home some chocolates, whatever, is actually a healthy relationship, even though he's bad to you the rest of the time, or she's bad to you the rest of the time.
See, but you know what's funny though?
Yeah.
That's how I look at the spring game. The spring game is flowers.
No, it is. I agree. But if I can't have a good relationship, at least buy me the damn flowers. That's my point. I'm like a 50s housewife here. A divorce isn't an option.
No, you're like in all caps.
You know what I mean? Like
Why are you yelling?
I'm not. Yes, TK's right. It's the piece of cheese. The spring game is the piece of cheese on the crap sandwich.
Weird. He uses my
Yes.
my kryptonite
Yes.
to make your point. You're always mad at TK, and now you're riding with him?
Yeah, because he's proved my point.
there's nothing like a good piece of cheese, though, TK.
I'm very conditional. That's what I'm saying, though. If I can't have the good relationship and I can't get divorced, at least buy me the damn flowers. That's all I'm saying.
All right.
We're going to talk a little NFL.
Team Band-Aid.
We're going to talk NFL. Hey, it's better than bleeding out, man. Talk
No,
NFL
no.
Combine coming up.
No.
Kicking off hour number 3 here on Hurrdat Sports Live, presented by Centris Federal Credit Union. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We are joined now by Jeff Risdon. He is the managing editor for the Draft Wire. Jeff, how are you this morning?
Good to be with you guys. Thanks for having me on.
Jeff, good morning. Good morning. Are you ready without context, or maybe you've done this for? Obviously, you're really good at it, where you can add your own context, where you don't have immediate winners and losers. Are you kind of in that camp, or are you okay? You know what? Monday morning, this thing's winding down. I definitely have some winners and losers.
So I'm actually writing the draft winners as we speak. I'm taking a little break from this talk to y'all. I got to be straight about that. I wanted to process a little bit because it's a long week when you're down there, and there's not a lot of sleep because you're going out and I'm an older guy. I'm typically in bed by like 9:30, and that's like when I'm going to have dinner when I'm down there. So. Had a nice little, I live about 3.5 hours away, nice car drive home, and sort of my thoughts. I'm trying to write them all out today. But there was definitely some winners and some losers. Probably the biggest winner is any team that doesn't need a quarterback, because it's not a good year to need a quarterback is the long and short of it.
Let me ask you something. I was making this case a couple weeks ago. I unfortunately, sometimes I go down these TikTok rabbit holes, and I was listening to some McShay and some Orlovsky stuff, and
I found it interesting with 1 through 3 in quarterbacks. And the general consensus coming into Indy was, okay, who's going to be 3? I've got a couple of guys now on the national level that now say 3 to 2 is just as close as 1 to 2. Do you believe with Shedur's inactivity and Dart's activity that 3 is much closer to 2 than we think?
I think it probably is. Shadur, just the feedback you get on him, there's so many questions, and he didn't even try to answer any of them while he was in Indy, and I think that's frustrating a lot of folks. Look, as a passer, I actually like him better than Cam Ward. Cam Ward has some pretty significant questions for me as a passer and as a processor of information. And I don't really have those issues with Shadur. I kind of like his tape quite a bit, actually. My worry with Shadur is, you know, he's been under Deion's thumb for so long, and he's not really doing anything to try to stake out on his own. I think that's a mistake on his camp's part. But yeah, Dart has done nothing but impress this entire offseason. I saw him down in Mobile. I saw him this weekend. He's a sharp guy, comes across as very polished, and he's got sort of the Bo Nix thing where, you know, people hold his early college career against him probably more than they should. And that happened with Bo Nix last year. And you saw what happened once he got to the Denver Broncos. You know, he was fantastic. I think if you just watch Ole Miss, and there is a stigma against Lane Kiffin's offenses as well, but you know, Dart certainly helped himself a lot in this process. There's no doubt about that.
Jeff, I want to stay right there because I think this is interesting, and maybe you would be doing something different if you had an answer for this, or maybe you have an answer and you're just good at what you do, so you like to do it. But how would you gauge it, right? It's this ambiguous kind of subjective thing, but you know it with quarterbacks. If you were doing interviews and it wasn't just kind of this quote unquote underwear Olympics, what does Jeff Risdon look for when he's looking for, can someone lead a franchise with just true competitive stamina?
You know, I think one of the things you want to see is, do they have charisma? Do they have confidence in themselves and their answers? Is it natural for them? Or can you see them like scrolling through the Rolodex in their head of like, okay, this is the answer my agent told me I need to say in this situation. And we get those guys, believe me, there's a lot of them. But yeah, you want that. You kind of want a guy who's like at ease, can go off the cuff a little bit. Look, a lot of the answers are basically the same, and you want to put your own individual spin on it. Dart did a good job of that. I think a guy like Seth Hennigan from Memphis, who doesn't get a lot of love, did a really good job of that in his interview as well. Just coming across as very natural, very easy to get along with. That's something that last year Michael Penix and Drake May both had that quality. I think that helped them in the draft process and is going to help them be better NFL players. Well, May obviously look very good. We'll see about Penix, but he will be the guy in Atlanta going forward. You know, none of the guys here, including Ward or Sanders, are close to those guys in terms of prospect grade in my book. But you know, you do get a little bit of that confidence from Ward. He's a bit of a quieter guy. But yeah, you definitely want that, just like being comfortable being yourself and being comfortable being around a diverse crop of people, because that's the way the NFL is, man. You're going to be dealing with, you know, dudes from, you know, that speak Cajun more than they speak English, and then dudes from Canada and dudes from New York, you know, guys from all over the place. You got to be able to connect with those people on a personal level. And that, if you don't have that, it's very hard to succeed in the NFL. And you can try to get a feel for that in the interviews that we get to do.
So I promise we'll talk about something other than quarterbacks in a minute here. But I did want to ask about, because there was a guy in particular that I've sort of thought was interesting. He didn't throw very well in Jalen Milroe. But are you surprised that he didn't go through some of the physical testing where that may have been an area where you could say, hey, no, look, this is sort of the athletic template you can draft and get something of value out of that pick? Like, did that surprise you at all?
Yeah, a little bit, but I'll tell you this: there's a lot of people in the NFL draft community who think that he's a better prospect as a running back than a quarterback, and I think he was, no pun intended, running away from that sort of stigma. But yeah, his throwing is not good. I was sitting with some Cleveland folks. The Browns get connected a lot to him in the draft, and they are certainly in need of a quarterback. And they were so hopeful that he would show something. And other than like one really, really nice throw on an out, he's not a good passer. So that was it was frustrating for them. And you're just seeing the fact that he's not gotten better at throwing from his time at Alabama. The Senior Bowl was very rough for him, and this didn't help him. So yeah, it's tough to be a Jalen Milroe fan right now.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, and I mean, just because I'm 100% authentic, Jeff. In high school, as a quarterback until I was a senior, got moved to running back, and I didn't want to. Like I fought it. Obviously, clearly, my dad was smarter than me, and ended up having did whatever at Nebraska, and it worked out. But I think whether it's Warren Moon or Don McPherson or Randall Cunningham or Jalen Milroe, there is this stigma within the black quarterback community, Jeff, where even Shedeur Sanders, who goes out of his way since he was in high school to be more than just a quote-unquote athletic scrambler, where sometimes the lack of security in oneself, it forces you to do decisions like that because you have it ingrained. I want them to see me as a passer. And sometimes it's to our detriment.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up Don McPherson. That's a flashback, man. That's a good pull. I was a big fan of his back at Syracuse.
Well, I watched Syracuse drill Nebraska in the early '80s, and so that kind of got me going on the McPherson hype train after that. And I felt like he kind of got snubbed in the Heisman. So that full disclosure, that's where that came from.
Yeah, I get that, and I'm a white volleyball player, so I can't really speak to the black quarterback experience. But
I were just being honest. That's awesome.
It is something that I know that people, and I'll go back to this. When Josh Allen was to throw a white quarterback into it, when he was at the combine, I actually asked him if he'd ever been worked out at tight end, and he dodged the question, and the people around me looked at me like I was insane. So yeah, there is a bit of a weird double standard there. Because by the way, he's a perfect physical specimen to be a tight end. He also happens to be a damn good quarterback, so he made the right choice too.
Those sweet dulcet tones you hear are Jeff Karch-Karai Risdon joining us on Hurrdat Live. Jeff, let me hop over to now. This is the running back in me that had to go to Indy with a guy like Eddie George, and I know physical prowess when I see it, and I'm thinking, ooh. Either barbecue or I can either hold up or I can wilt. At what point, if you're Genty, Ashton, do you say, man, almost everybody's running of the top guys? I would think once I would see Hampton do what he did or some of these guys, I may have to do something physical. If you're Ashton, are you pretty cool with kind of just, I kind of know my value, I'm going to wait? Or would you have liked to see where he stacked up, which was what turned out to be a pretty good running back group?
Yeah, and Omari and Hampton was phenomenal in Indianapolis. Both Ohio State guys, Henderson and Judkins, looked very good.
Couldn't believe Judkins was 221. I could not. They said 221 in my jaw. I'm like, on this show, and I do broadcasts. I'm in Columbus. I described him as a little guy. 221. I was floored.
Yeah, he does not look that big, even in person. Like when you're standing next to him, like, oh, wow, you're 221, really? Like his thighs must be unreal. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of Genty trying to compete. Show that you want. The famous story about Calvin Johnson, who wasn't going to run, didn't even bring his shoes, and then he saw other people running really fast. And he's like, all right, borrowed shoes and ran a 4.28. That would have been if he could have gone out and done that. And now he's not a super blazer like that, but just show, okay, I'm right with these guys, and I'm competitive enough that I'm not planning on running, but I'm going to do it anyways. Something like that would have cemented him as a top 10 pick, and now he's opened the door in a running back class that's really deep. There's not a lot of variance between him and that next tier, and even the tier below that. He's opened himself up a little bit. He better have a fantastic pro day if he's going to work out there, because the crowd is catching up with him.
So I'm probably going to get this in your answer, but whatever you thought about these next two guys, which one of the two is your opinion more is the same? Woody Marks or Caleb Johnson?
So I saw Woody Marks in person. I was at the USC Michigan game, and he didn't do a lot in that game. Caleb Johnson, other than his speed, is a really impressive running back. So I like Caleb Johnson. I wish he ran a little bit lower to the ground, and I wish he ran faster too. But there's a lot to like with him. And Marks is a guy I liked his work in the blocking and the receiving drills, which that's part of playing running back. I know there's a lot of running backs that don't necessarily like to do that, but that's where he stands out. So it's I'm definitely higher on Johnson coming out of that though.
So in the weekend, so Johnson's 40 time, because how you think of him didn't derail your thought process more than Marks actually ran better, I thought, than he would with his straight line speed. But I like Marks. I think he's one of the sleepers in the running back room. Your opinion is still more consistent with KJ than it is Woody going into Indy.
Yeah, I think so. That's a good way to put it. Nothing changed my opinion that much on either of them. But yeah, Johnson's speed was, and that was one of those where we're sitting up in the media section in Lucas Oil Field, and we're all looking at each other like, "Wow, that was not good, guys." So I'll tell you what, he's the guy that was in that conversation to be running back 2, maybe running back 3. And I think just that lack of speed and how much so many other guys did well probably dropped him into, the running back 5, running back 6 range, which is, end of day 2, early day 3. Although just one of the takeaways that I had is there's a lot of teams that need a running back. It's not a good free agency class at all. So they might actually get bubbled up. I know one of the pundits made news when he had 3 first-round running backs in a mock draft. I think there's going to be 2. I think Judkins and Hampton are securely in the first round. I think you're going to see a lot more on day 2, like that, maybe late second, early third round than there's been in recent years too.
Jeff, we've talked about the running backs where I think most people think it's a fairly deep running back class. Where are some other position groups? Obviously, quarterback's not one of them. Doesn't seem like offensive tackle especially is a very good group this year either. Where are some of the groups that you think there's not only some depth, but also some high-end level guys?
Tight end stands out. That's a very good position this year. Tyler Warren at the top, obviously. Colson Loveland from Michigan, who's not going to be he had a rough one just because he shows up at his podium interview in an immobilizing arm sling and also said he had shoulder surgery and won't be available probably until the start of the year at the earliest. But yeah, the tier below that and the depth guys, CJ Dipray from Alabama, fantastic combine. Probably my favorite podium interview of the week. Just a guy that, gets it, exudes the sort of NFL tight end that you want to see. Toughness, but also some precision and, just a great talker too. I could sit there and listen to him for a long time. Tight end is certainly good. I think cornerback might not be anybody like great at the top, excluding Travis Hunter from the conversation, but there's a lot of guys. Maxwell Harrison from Kentucky, who was the fastest guy in Indianapolis, and he's got some impressive game tape too.
Especially when as little as he played. Yeah, did flawlessly in the coverage drills that they did. I think cornerback, it's a good year to need a cornerback in day 2, whether you need a slot or an outside guy, and even some guys that can play that hybrid safety cornerback role. I thought there were a couple of bigger corners. Isaiah Thomas is one of them who can do that sort of thing, and there's a market for that. Interior offensive line, again, this is not a position that's top heavy, but man, there's a lot of guys from rounds 2 through 5 that are going to play a very long time in the NFL coming out of this one. And this is that's another spot where it hasn't been all that strong in recent years in the draft. This is sort of a year to restock that. And I think a lot of the tackles that are going to move inside, guys like Wyatt Milam from West Virginia, he was a fantastic tackle. The arm length and the way he's cut just doesn't translate to tackle very well.
he's a very enthusiastic guy going in to play center or guard, and I think he's going to do very well at that. And there's a few of those guys that are kicking inside. One of the big debates was Will Campbell. I think he's a tackle. I would leave him at tackle because I think he and Donovan Jackson, who ironically played guard at Ohio State before he kicked out to left tackle, I think they're the two best tackles in this class, and it's not even close. And it's really not a bad tackle class. It's just, there's no Lane Johnson. There's no Jason Peters. There's not that guy in this class. But, no Orlando Pace to go to a guy who beat me up when I was in high school. That's my standard. I didn't see Orlando Pace 2 there.
It's funny that you bring up Orlando Pace. He had brought he was with his son on a recruiting trip in Madison last year at the same time I was with my kiddo, and I stood next to him. And even though he now looks more like a power forward than he does a Hall of Fame tackle, he is still a massive individual. To hear that he beat up on you, I don't know, man. You might be selling yourself short with the volleyball thing.
Yeah, well, quick story. He was a freshman when I was a senior. And we played the same conference. He went to Sandusky High School in Sandusky, Ohio, my original hometown. And he just destroyed everybody. By the way, he started as a right tackle because they had a left tackle who happens to be my cousin, Jonathan Paulum, who was a 3-year starter at left tackle at Ball State and kept him out of the lineup at left. Yeah, that was not good. So as a volleyball playing, definitely not football player, defensive end, I was 6'3", about 184 at that time, and I wasn't even a speed bump for Orlando. That was a rough day.
Pleasantly surprised by our two fellow really, really good wideouts. I got to go back and watch Iowa State's quarterback tape too, especially post gambling scandal. But with what Higgins and those guys were able to do testing wise, did it change your opinion on wide receiver one? Because I actually think, Jeff, that is the most fluid position of who's going to be one, even more so than running back or quarterback, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, there's definitely some dealer's choice going on with that, and quarterback play matters a lot. You certainly saw it with Noel and Higgins coming out of Iowa State. Both those guys have had fantastic off seasons. You see it with the Maryland guys, Ty Felton and Caden Prather. They're not in competition to be number one, but you're wow, they had a real quarterback at Maryland. These guys could be a lot more dangerous. And I think that reflects, sort of on the programs that they come from, and you got to not hold that against them. But yeah, it's a weird year at wide receiver. Again, Travis Hunter probably going to be the top on a lot of draft boards, even if he doesn't play it. By the way, I think he's a corner first. He's special at corner. Wide receiver, he's really dang good, but I think you can find guys that can also do what he does a little bit easier than you can what he does at cornerback. His instincts and footwork and coverage is just unreal. But yeah, wide receiver, this is going to be one of those years where you can place prop bets on who's the first and the over/under for spots, and I'm not touching any of those at wide receiver because it's wide open.
So, Jeff, I wanted to ask you about a couple wide receivers here because we had two guys that had some of the stranger combines that I've seen in a while, just in terms of their overall profile. One of them you mentioned, Caden Prather, really good 40 time, pretty mediocre explosive numbers, which was pretty strange. And then the other one is Tez Johnson from Oregon.
Yeah, what?
Terrible physical profile, very average speed, incredible explosion and agility. What do you do with those two guys where their numbers don't even seem to make sense within themselves?
And just to go further on Johnson, he had a really poor 40 time. He ran 4.51 at 154 pounds, but he had the highest time to GPS.
He plays 4.11.
Yeah, in the drills, he had the highest miles per hour in actual running.
He had the highest miles per hour of any wide receiver, but once it took him a little bit to get to that top speed and he couldn't sustain it. I don't know what you do with him, honestly, because again, I saw him in person. I was at Michigan versus Oregon. He's electrifying, but he's so small. He is almost the exact same size as my 16-year-old volleyball playing daughter, and it's really tough to draft a
project
guy
that into
like
an
that.
NFL. Yeah.
Let me ask you something, Jeff. Of guys that in their different positions, and it's going to lead me to my follow-up question. They're different positions, but who do you think was affected more by not going through all the drills in Indianapolis? Shedeur Sanders or Will Johnson?
Oh, as you guys know, I'm in Michigan, and I'm very close to the Michigan program. I'm not a Michigan fan, but Will Johnson and I'll say Mason Graham into that too. They did not help themselves by not working out. And one of the big things with Will Johnson is, okay, he had a toe injury of questionable, severity, and it would have been very nice to see him come out and say, I'm good. And then if he doesn't run well, okay, I'm not fully back from the toe injury. He has a natural build out to it, and he didn't do it, and that was very frustrating. Now both, and I'll throw Mason Graham into there as well. Those two guys had better kill it on March 21st at Michigan's Pro Day. Otherwise, it's not going to be good for either of them, because I'll tell you, and I'll quote my old friend Pat Kerwin, the former Jets GM, who's on Sirius XM NFL Radio. When you're healthy and you don't participate, you're telling me you're hiding something, even if that's true or not. And they both are hiding things that I don't think they wanted to have questioned. And look, Will Johnson, fantastic playmaker. I tend to think he's a little bit overrated to begin with. He's a guy that exploits bad quarterback play. If you watch him against good teams, he gambles for the big play, but he will give them up. He gives up a lot of soft completions. I would have loved to have seen him compete and dispel some of that, and he didn't do it, and that's very frustrating.
Whether it's a guy like Ransom or Starks or even an Awari, is there a position that you're willing to overlook production and give the benefit of the doubt?
Yeah, and that's a Shamar Stewart question too, from Texas A&M.
Yeah.
And even Derek Harmon from Oregon as well. I think a lot of it really depends on the usage in the school. Like at Texas A&M, Shamar Stewart playing inside, like that's not where he's going to play in the NFL. So you have to, train yourself a little bit to not like, okay, why is he playing a 3-tech when Mississippi State has no right tackle, and you're playing him on the inside? Like it's easy to see why they didn't win the SEC East, even though they had really good talent. Wide receiver is another one where Jalen Noel's a good example. Didn't have great numbers, but okay, was he used properly? Ty Felton from Maryland is the same way. Like he's an outside speed receiver. You used him as an underneath gadget guy. Like you have to be able to contextualize why they don't have the numbers. It's not like he was putting balls on the ground or anything. I think that's really important. That's why we watch the film. That's why I'm bleary-eyed from staring at a computer screen all day watching these guys.
Let me get you out of here on this with a couple of Nebraska guys that clearly helped themselves in terms of money made for you. We're kind of extrapolating, just having fun, since I've laughed halfway through the little anecdotes this segment. Who helped themselves out more financially, Ty Robinson or Thomas Fidone?
Oh, Fidone definitely did a lot for himself. By the way, he was a really good podium interview. I did not know a lot about him going in. So he's a guy that certainly helped himself. But Ty Robinson is a guy, as a Detroit Lions fan, I would love to see him in Detroit in those middle rounds. I think he's a great fit for what they want to do. Lunch pail, attitude, energy, positive energy, and looks pretty good on the field too. But I think Fidone, just my goodness, I need to watch more of him now. And when you're a lesser known guy like him, if you can do that to people like me, you're doing that to people in the NFL too. They're like, maybe I need to look a little bit longer at this guy. So I think he had a very good combine.
Yeah, the record length, 6'4", 243. What was it about his delivery that had you captivated? Because around here, he's pretty authentic, and I think sometimes that had gotten him in trouble. But he's the guy that if I was going to back alley, he's probably a top 4 or 5 guys I would choose to go with. I
like the fact that he knew who he was and didn't run away from that. you get sometimes where you get guys that are like, they have a little bit of that reputation and they're going to try to be squeaky clean and, play it straight. And he didn't do that. He let out who he was. And, I think that plays very well, especially with teams like the Eagles and the Lions and the Texans, teams that have former players as coaches, or very strong team-centric, tough cultures like that. They're going to love him a lot more because of that.
I'm telling you, he's the guy on the town where, they go and Affleck's like, hey, man, I need you to go someplace with me.
We're going to hurt some people.
And Fidone's answer would be, whose car are we taking?
I love it.
That's what he would say.
So in other words, he's a Dan Campbell guy, Jeff.
Absolutely.
Jeff, we appreciate the time. Hope you get a little sleep this week as you catch up, and we'll look forward to that winners list over at the Draft Wire. We appreciate your time, buddy.
My pleasure. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Jeff.
We'll be back. More Hurrdat Sports Live coming up next. We're back here on Hurrdat Sports Live. That's DB. I'm Ravi, Lulla here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. And we touched on something a little bit there with Jeff that I thought was interesting, and you wanted to get into a little bit more.
Yeah, I just think it's interesting, and maybe I didn't ask the question right, because I think there's a handful of guys. I think to themselves, I don't know. I would wonder if they're thinking, man, I should have
Worked
fill
out
in the blank.
Yeah, I should have done something.
Yeah. Like, at what point, if you're Shedeur and you're watching dart, are you just supremely confident in your pro day because you're throwing to
guys
your three guys that he'll throw to, and
they've been working with for 2 months or whoever. Yeah.
Versus if I'm Ashton, at some point I'm competing.
Genty's the one that
it's already a deep running back class.
Yeah,
I gotta go get my game right.
Genty's the one that I think, I don't know if confuses, but that I like the least about not doing anything. Because,
well, what about Will Johnson? Those corners were running.
Will Johnson's a good one too, because there's positionally, there's certain places where it's okay and where it's not okay not to participate. Quarterback, it's okay not to participate. Like, that's an accepted position not to participate, right?
Yeah.
Running back's not really.
We'll put you on the hot seat here for a second.
Let's do it.
Of the guys that performed,
Mhm.
versed in whatever it is that you thought about them, and they didn't have what I would call a bad day. It's a good day, relatively speaking.
Okay.
Is there anybody that you can think of whose stock still probably maybe wasn't hurt, but certainly didn't help?
That's an interesting question. So that did or didn't participate?
Did.
I think there's a lot of guys that didn't participate that I'm like, I don't know how much that's going to help you. Caleb Johnson, maybe?
I would probably give you that, although the easy thing to point to would be the 40 time. But I never pictured him as a timing burner. He's a I don't get caught when I'm playing guy.
Yeah, I think people would have liked to see that play out a little better on the clock.
I don't know, man. I just watch him run. He's gifted.
I understand that, but these numbers do matter to the teams. They're not always right, but they do make an impact on their decisions.
I have to, obviously I have to say yes, they do. But I do think good ones can see past a lot.
Sure, but there's a lot of bad ones.
Not as many as you think. Not as many as you think. Hard to keep your job for a long time when you're not good at evaluating.
Right, but these jobs change a lot. So that means theoretically there's a lot of bad ones.
Which would also mean that sometimes your thought process can change too.
Sure, that's possible.
And there's a lot of what am I willing to overlook versus 100%. What I'm getting.
What do you care about? What, especially when you're looking at Caleb Johnson, he's like a third rounder?
Well, I think it was higher than that outside of this week.
Day 2, though.
Yes.
Right? So you're looking at a day 2 guy like Caleb Johnson. So you go, okay.
Because now you may have 3 running backs in the first round.
Yeah. So you go, what do you think? One of the Ohio State guys creeps in? So Genty, Hampton, who's the third?
Probably Judkins.
Judkins, okay.
Even though, like, if I had my druthers,
you like Henderson better.
I'd probably take Travion.
Yeah.
But to Severe's point, which I like, Judkins, I certainly don't have to worry about his competitive stamina.
So that's the thing with Genty where I go, hey, if you're competitive and you're watching this, at what point as a GM do you go, hey, I kind of would have liked to see that competitive juice flow a little bit and have you get out there and run? But to your question, the guy that comes to mind is, you probably
There's no way we're going to say the same person.
I probably would have liked to see Caleb Johnson run like a 4.52. And I get in real football that probably doesn't matter, but in the draft I think it does.
Okay, let me preface it. Let me ask it a different way.
Okay.
If you used to evaluate guys and fringe guys, right? You had to kind of steal and be efficient with your evaluations.
Mm-hmm.
Would you rather have the film validate what you saw in Indy or Indy validate what you saw in film?
Would I rather have the film validate what I saw in Indy or Indy validate what I saw on film? So I don't know which this is. I'm going to trust the film.
Okay. You rather have Indy validate what you saw on tape.
Yeah, I'm going to trust the film.
Because what if you watch tape and then you watch them in person and you're like, well, how'd they pull that off?
So there's, it's funny you asked that because I was reading an article about a totally different thing. And I think you'll understand how this connects before I get there. But so I was reading this article about the Red Sox prospects. They've got a few prospects that are about to hit the majors that people think really highly of. And it was this in-depth deep dive about how they've developed these guys. And basically the Red Sox philosophy of late is hitters at the major league level are elite level problem solvers, right? It's not all about the physical tools necessarily. It's not all about, some of the like more fine metrics. It's like, okay, how well do you solve the puzzle? Okay. If I see a guy that doesn't have the physical tools, but was still highly productive, there's a part of me that thinks, oh, he knows how to solve the puzzle, right? He's never been physically advantaged. He'll figure out how to solve the puzzle.
This is giving me chills.
I worry about guys that are so physically dominant that they've never had to figure out the puzzle because at some point the physical catches up for most guys. Now, some guys it doesn't. Derrick Henry, the physical never caught up. Not saying he doesn't know how to solve the puzzle, but the physical never caught up. He's a freak at every level forever. Same thing with LeBron. Freak at every level forever, right? He's 40 years old, still flying through the air. But most guys at one point or another, that's part of the reason I love Curry so much. I could tell he had to solve the puzzle at Davidson. I was like, if he can solve the puzzle at Davidson, I'm going to bet on him solving the puzzle in the NBA.
You know what our superpower is?
What's that?
I think as a staff.
What's that?
Is adjusting on the fly.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the guys we look for. It's not a guy that can get on the dry erase board and it's like, okay, we planned for this. They're doing this. Now we got to adjust.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, if we're at least equal, are better in the second halves than we are the first.
Mm-hmm.
It's and I like that, which is why I hung on to it. And I kept saying this over and over and over again when Coach Rhule was looking for a defensive coordinator. What's the one thing I always went back to? He said, I want a problem solver.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of guys, you'll be amazed. I'm telling you, guys can draw.
Mm-hmm.
And they can tell you about, the pros and cons of a 4-eye versus being in a 5 or why they like 2-high versus single. But the ability to adjust on the fly. We this is a dumb example, but I'll give you one to the good on a guy that I gravitated towards. People gave Hoskinson and that coaching staff at the Junior Storm a hard time.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, one of the things, he coaches hard, right? One of the things that I always appreciated about him, every time we played him, I knew this dude, this staff will come up with something.
Yeah.
And even when they got me one time, because I'm doing defense, and I told you about the toss, and toss pass.
Mm-hmm.
Real time in game. I mean, it's as intense as it's ever going to be.
Yeah.
Two programs that have gone back and forth, and it's. I did like this, like I had a fake hat.
Mm-hmm.
I walked out to the hash. I said, "Hey, Haas," just tip of the cap.
Yeah.
And I'm sure people are like, "This dude, why aren't you mad at that corner for getting sucked up or what?" I'm like, "Hey, man, sometimes you just have to tip your cap
Because they got you.
To people that can figure it out."
Yeah.
And when you can, I'm always going to ride with those guys.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's easy when it's not real.
It's easy when it's easy.
Hey, man.
I know that sounds dumb.
How much time do you guys spend as a staff?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, we do that. But can you adjust?
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's one of the it's just it's so underappreciated about being able to just process information quickly.
It's why I kind of, even though personality-wise, I don't think I like him that much, although I think it works positionally, I think I'm going to kind of ride with a Cam Scattaboo. Like, I feel like that guy has problem solved.
Yeah.
and has figured some things out. Because here's the thing is,
How about that 40 or that vertical? Just run.
Yeah. But again,
people don't think you're fast anyway. You're not going to hurt yourself.
Yeah, unless you're going to run like a 4.8, nobody cares.
Guys that jump 40 inches don't run 4.8.
I get that. No,
I'm just saying.
No, I know. But I'm just saying, like, unless you're going to run something
He
horrifying.
could have stopped, dropped, and rolled and beat a 4.8.
I know, but you know what I mean. Like, if you're not going to run something horrifying, it really can't hurt you if you're Cam Scattaboo because you're a guy that people don't think's fast. So it's cool. But like, I will take a guy, especially earlier, right? Because if you haven't had to figure out a problem, if you haven't had to solve a puzzle until you get to the NFL, that's a tough place to learn how to do it, right? If you haven't had to figure those things out, so that was my point with the Red Sox thing.
That's kind of why I like Dart.
Because he had to problem solve early?
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of my point with the Red Sox thing is part of their, like, hey, you're 18 years old. We're going to throw some weird stuff at you. We're going to throw different weighted bats at you. We're going to throw, they have this machine that'll throw like 110 miles an hour. Just see if you can get a bat on it, right? Like they'll throw all sorts of weird stuff at guys just to see how they process through trying to figure it out. And I think that's really advantageous when you are able to do that with guys in high school and college, because there are some guys that are going to be more physically gifted, right? But if you can put them in situations, even if it's not necessarily realistic, where they still have to figure some things out, you're going to make them better for it down the road instead of just letting them be like, oh.
So that's what you would change when I asked Jeff the question of how you're trying to find it?
Yeah, I think so.
You're looking at guys' failures? A lot of those guys haven't failed.
I know, but, well, they failed at something. Everybody's failed at
find that.
Everybody's failed at something. Let me see if I care about the thing they failed at. And then let me see, like, if they never figure it out, is that something I can live with? That's one thing I would look at. And two, how did they come back from those failures? Whatever it was.
So the guy that I felt like along these lines a little bit that tested pretty okay, but I feel like people were like, wow, really?
Kind of meh.
Was Starks from Georgia.
Mm.
Good numbers.
Yeah.
I mean, tested fairly well, although the 4.5 I think people probably looked at because now all of a sudden if you just run a 4.5 flat, it's slow.
You're not fast anymore.
But I look at his production on the film. I wonder if he's working against historically Georgia secondary players in the NFL.
Probably, to a certain extent.
Because they haven't, much like how they get D-line and linebackers, right? Mm-hmm. The secondary, in terms of how it's
been a little hit and miss.
Correlates, has been pretty hit and miss.
So it's kind of like
Starks is a baller.
So it's like what Ryan Roberts said last week, right? Where he's like, hey, you got to stop the helmet scouting. Where it's like, oh, this running back it was Penn State running backs for a while, right? Oh, those guys never perform. Well, Larry Johnson was pretty good, right? Or, oh, you get these wide receivers from or quarterbacks from Ohio State. Well, CJ Stroud's pretty good. Mm-hmm. Like there's like helmet scouting's lazy and kind of stupid, right? CJ Stroud has nothing to do with Dwayne Haskins, has nothing to do with Will Howard, has nothing to do with Troy Smith, right? Like none of those guys have anything to do with each other. You're just like, oh, no, but it's
Texas Tech quarterbacks.
Yeah, Patrick Mahomes pretty good, isn't he? Had nothing to do with Cliff Kingsbury. Had nothing to do with B.J. Simons. Had nothing to do with Sonny Cumbie, right? Like, nothing to do with the fact that, they played the same position at the same school 20 years apart. Who cares, right? Like, I think some of that is Starks. And I think, you get a 4.5, you get a 33-inch vertical. Nothing like crazy. He tested fine, but it's fine, right? If you're trying to overcome a stereotype, you probably got to do better than fine.
Yeah.
That's the problem. Sometimes you got to do better to find.
Because somehow he's going to get passed up as safety 1.
And somebody's going to be real happy about it when they get him at safety 2 or 3 or whatever.
Yeah. How about my guy Siegel?
Yeah.
Marquise. Man.
Ran like crazy.
So I never said by name, but he was the guy that a couple years ago called a year and a half ago and was talking about what to do with generational money for him.
Mm.
He goes, hey, I'm just looking into some things. This is more money than I've ever had. He'd just gotten the K-State from NDSU.
Mm-hmm.
And, spent an inordinate amount of time with our family just to see his competitive stamina.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't always easy for him. That safety group, the DB group as a whole, I thought was
pretty good.
Was better than
a lot of those guys ran fast.
So they're going to be day 2 and there's a good middle group, kind of like the O-line. Mm-hmm. A lot of good middle group.
Not a ton of top end.
Yeah.
Siegel went 4.37, 1.510.
Yeah.
38 vertical,
Yeah.
10-10 broad
Mhm.
at 5'11", 200 pounds.
Did you see the
So he's a
average
little-
size for safeties?
He's a little squatty, but
No,
he's
but here's the deal.
Yeah.
You know the average size? 5'11", 200.
So he's right on.
And yes.
Yeah.
Which is
I think people think they're bigger.
smaller than I thought.
I would have guessed like 6'1", 210.
Yeah.
Probably. I think.
It's just interesting.
I probably would have guessed bigger than that, which, 6'1", 210, 5'11", 200, not a huge difference, but it does hit your eye a little differently. That's a good day for Siegel. He may be, you want to talk about a guy that probably made himself some money.
Yeah, I hope so.
He's
good player.
Good play.
And I'll be curious.
The tape will show up, right?
A couple double move. Yeah, there's still some things he's working on.
But
his competitive stamina is at a really, really, really high level.
When you put the tape with the measurements, that's going to help him out.
His goddamn mom is his biggest fan. Shout out Natasha.
Not my Natasha, different Natasha.
Different Natasha.
I don't know. This is part of the reason I love this stuff, right?
It's
part of the reason I love this
the
stuff.
most inexact science ever.
Yeah, like you have all these data points, and you could have 10 different.
And I still want to know about your personality.
Yes, and you could have 10 different people that'll interpret all of it differently. Right? That's the fun part about this for me.
Real quick before we get to our last segment, which
Yeah.
I assume will be some sort of bet on it. Which position are you willing to overlook the measurables the most?
Ooh, let's come back with that. I got to think on that for a second. We'll be back. More Hurrdat Sports Live.
I don't know.
Maybe
it is, maybe isn't.
Wrapping up the show here on Hurrdat Sports Live on a Monday. Lots going on today. Doing a lot of NFL draft talk.
A lot of debating.
A lot of debating. We'll get to bet on it and DB's picks here in a minute. But you asked me a question before the break, and it was, what position am I most willing to overlook the measurables? And, I don't think it's D-line. I don't think it's D-line because so I'm assuming we're taking height, weight into the measurables as well, right? Not just the numbers.
When I say,
so what did you mean when you said measurables?
Let's take out height and weight.
Okay, so that's different. Then it's definitely not D-line. Because I'll give.
You're going to go edge versus interior.
Yes.
Fair.
So like an edge rusher, you have to meet certain benchmarks.
So with height and weight, you don't have to extrapolate what it means.
Right.
It just is what it is.
Although sometimes you do, because there's a reason Aaron Donald slipped to where he did.
12?
Yeah.
Or whatever he was.
He should have been drafted before that.
Well, now.
No, but even at the time, because the only thing anybody had bad to say about him.
Let me tell you something about Aaron Donald.
Was the size.
Let me tell you something about Aaron Donald.
What's that?
At some point as a team, you got to say, we'll adjust to what he does well.
Yes.
And the Rams were willing to do that with how they played D-line.
Sure. Yes, I agree.
We're willing to maybe at that time.
We'll work around you.
Stop the run and route to the quarterback.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll work around you. Work around your skill set.
You got to be willing. But that's coaching though.
It is. But that's a guy that pops in my mind with a height weight thing where you're like, hey, I'll figure it out. I'm not worried about his height weight. He's a really good ball player. So it's not going to be D-line for me. I
certainly not quarterback.
Not quarterback.
Sometimes people fall in love with that too much.
Yeah. My gut was going to say running back.
Really?
Running back or wide receiver?
So if it's running back, I'm surprised you felt like Caleb Johnson was affected the most.
Yeah, that doesn't mean I think that. I think I'm trying to project what NFL GMs are doing, right? Like if I'm Caleb Johnson and I'm kind of trying to get into that running back 3 spot.
2 or 3.
I mean, I didn't.
You never thought he could jump Hampton?
I didn't think so.
Okay.
If I'm trying to get into that 3
but
spot.
Now you're worried about whether he got caught by Judkins and.
Yeah, we got caught by Judkins. I know some people. I don't. He's probably now more in the neighborhood of Henderson, in terms of where people are looking at him
as a running back 4 or 5.
Yeah,
or 5, 6,
somewhere in that neighborhood. And do I think he's better than some of those guys? For sure, but I do think it hurt him in the perception of some teams' eyes. Right?
No. He's just one of those guys where I would simply say watch the tape.
For sure.
He's playing against really good players
really good defenses.
And a really limited offense.
I'll say in an offense that had very little threat of passing at any point, almost ever, right? So I agree with you on that. But I'm going to say I think it's either running backs or wide receivers. I've seen a ton of wide receivers with kind of mediocre measurables be really, really good because they're great route runners. They have great ball skills. They just have a knack for catching the football and for getting open. And I've seen a ton of wide receivers with incredible skill sets.
I would probably say wide receiver.
That are crap.
I'd probably say wide receiver.
I think wide receiver. I think the measurables translate the least
At the wideout spot?
out of wide receivers to almost any other position.
I'm going to say wide receivers too.
But I've also seen I threw running backs in there because I've seen some running backs with like kind of meh measurables be really, really good.
Yeah, I want my flowers on Golden too.
You could have them. Wait, do you want flowers or do you want a good relationship?
No, I'm
That's a
over the
different-
relationship. give me the flowers.
Give me some candies.
Give me the food gift card.
No, yeah, you were on Golden when
Months.
pretty much nobody else was. He measured exactly. I mean, he measured incredibly, right? And then the tape is obviously going to back up what
The
we
guy
saw.
made so many tough catches. And I explained this weirdly to you over text, but I'm like, he actually benefited from
Bad quarterback play or inconsistent.
viewers not being very accurate.
Yeah.
And he came back from being dinged a couple of times.
Yeah,
Like, don't discount that.
especially
For me, that ranks high.
especially with receivers. They don't always do that.
Yeah.
I will say one thing's funny with Golden is that whole situation. I don't really know why he wasn't getting credit because we're not really enamored with Ewers.
He just overlooked him. He just was an afterthought. And this started where I really got passionate about it is we were talking about receivers in the playoffs and I went position by position. I was like, oh, would you take their receiver? I'm like, I don't know, man. Like,
Yeah.
Golden's pretty good.
Yeah.
Like, he's way good.
Yeah, he is. And I don't know if we were giving too much credit to Sark in the offense or we aren't really enamored with Ewers, so I don't know why we'd give him more credit than we would Golden, but obviously the tape and the combine are going to match up with that guy.
How much do you think Bond wants to go back to school?
I don't know.
What about I get the test.
What do you think? Do you think he wants to go back to school?
I would.
Yeah.
We can't catch.
Catching is a crucial part of the job description.
But I've seen guys learn to catch the ball, though.
It's weird because that doesn't seem like something you'd be able to fix,
I don't know.
right?
There's this guy that plays up in the Pacific Northwest.
DK Metcalf.
Yeah.
He still has some drops.
Yeah.
Like he's still like you almost never fix it.
Des Bryant was a dropsy guy. I mean, guys can fix it.
They can fix it to an extent, but like it typically is. Terrell Owens was a dropper.
Oh, yeah.
Terrell Owens was a dropper for
Yeah.
sure. Now he still always struggled with it to a certain extent.
By the way, he's forever going to be one of those guys. You're going to look at those numbers. If you ever just go back
I know.
down that rabbit hole, and you're like, damn, he might have been better than we thought.
He definitely is better than we thought. He's one of the guy that the extra stuff took away from how good he really was.
Sit-ups in the front yard.
Just all of it. Just the whole thing. It was always a circus with T.O. It's a switch.
His numbers are incredible.
And honestly, I think we probably penalize him for some of like the team switching and never like having a home really after the 49ers. A couple years here, a couple years there, whatever, just bouncing around. I think we penalize guys for that when they feel like a journeyman. Because part of it is we think, oh well, if he was that good, nobody would let him go, and that's just
I
not how it
wonder
goes.
what we would think of his testing numbers.
I bet they're not crazy. You want me to see if I can find him? Did he do the combine?
East Tennessee. Was he Tennessee or
He was.
he's one of the directional Tennessees, I think.
Yeah.
Is he Chattanooga?
Chattanooga.
Is he?
I think he's
is
Chattanooga.
he
Tennessee
UTC?
Chattanooga. Yeah, I think so. Well, I've got some numbers here. I don't know if these are official combine numbers, but I've got some numbers here. So he went just right at 6'3",
Mhm.
213.
Yeah.
Good arm. So 40-yard dash. What would you guess?
What do you weigh?
213.
He probably went 4.56.
4.65.
4.65.
That's what this is telling me. Vertical.
34.
33.
Okay.
20-yard shuttle.
Oh, back when they used to do the good stuff.
Mhm.
He was a 3.99.
4.26.
Jeez.
20-yard split.
2-3.
272.
Yeesh.
10-yard split.
As a 4.65 guy, I'll go 1.63.
159. So is there a single number in there that you thought was good?
Wow, 159 is a 213-pounder?
Yeah.
No,
No.
not a 1.
I can give you percentiles. 19th percentile in 40-yard dash.
Yeah.
28th percentile in vertical.
Hey, look, yep, I'm definitely sticking with wide receiver.
42nd percentile in shuttle. I mean, it's not like Jerry Rice was fast.
I'm definitely sticking with wide receiver.
You know, like there's a bunch. Larry Fitzgerald's not fast.
Just the range.
You have a ton of different body types, a ton of different speeds that are successful, and then you just got a ton of dudes that have crazy skills that are never any good. Yeah, I think it's definitely wide receiver.
And the scary thing is you can't gauge toughness either.
Yeah,
Those 50-50 jump ball guys versus sitting it down and getting ready to get smoked versus C2.
even if it's not toughness too, there's a skill at 50-50 balls, like high pointing a ball skills. None of that measures, right? None of that measures. That's all tape.
Mm.
You got any games you like tonight?
Yeah, I like Kansas.
Kansas?
Kansas is getting. I think Kansas may be getting double digits. What is Kansas up to?
I'm checking right now.
Kansas may in fact be double digits. 10 maybe.
Kansas is. Oh, help me out here, ESPN.
I'm trying.
They
to
are
help
9.5.
Okay. I like KC and I like KU, and I hate to say this because they're your guys, but I think I don't know why the line is what it is. Look at UCLA and Northwestern.
Ah, my fighting McCronins. We do love UCLA. UCLA and Northwestern is a 3.5-point favorite.
What
UCLA.
does Ken Palm have that game?
I mean, it's a joke.
It's an absolute joke.
I know, Mick.
Let's see what Ken Palm has UCLA and Northwestern. He has got it at a 1-point game.
Yeah, I like Northwestern. The line makes 0 sense.
That is a 2.5-point difference between UCLA and Northwestern.
I like your purple kitties.
But my thought is, okay, if you're going with my philosophy here, the line's wrong, it's free money.
No, if I was free money, I'd be taking UCLA. The line stinks, so I'm going.
Not according to Ken Palm. Ken Palm, that's free money on UC or on. I don't know, man. That's bet on
You
it.
wouldn't have been able to guess that line, though.
No, not in a million years.
What's Northwestern playing for? Same thing Minnesota was?
Pride. That's DB.
Purple pride.
I'm Ravi Lulla. We'll be back tomorrow on Hurrdat Sports Live.